Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. I'm calling the meeting to order. The NVUSD Board of Education is holding a regular virtual board meeting tonight that all can participate in remotely. You can join via Zoom. Specific directions on how to participate are located on the Board of Education webpage on the district's website, nvusd.org/board. The open session part of the meeting agenda begins at 7 p.m. Public comment and closed session items. Before going into closed session, the board is available for public comment on closed session agenda items. Is there any public comment on closed session items? Mr. Ruiz?
Mr. Ruiz?
All right, I see him, it's muted, Dr. Masani, but
Yeah, so I can see from here and there's no public comment.
there's no public comment? Okay, thank you, Dr. Massetti. Seeing that there are none, the Napa Valley Unified School District will now adjourn into closed session. See you all at 7. Thank you. Great. Good evening. My name is Elba Gonzalez Mares, and this is the Napa Valley Unified School District Board of Education. The NVUSD Board of Education is holding a regular board meeting tonight that all can participate in remotely. You can join via Zoom. Buenas noches, mi nombre es Elba González Mares y esta es la Mesa de Educación del Distrito Escolar Unificado del Valle de Napa, NVUSD por sus siglas en inglés. La Mesa de Educación de NVUSD está llevando a cabo una reunión esta noche en la que todos pueden participar de forma remota. Puede unirse a través de Zoom. Interpretation in Spanish is available for tonight's virtual board meeting. To access interpretation from a computer, click on the interpretation icon on the bottom of your screen and from within the Zoom application. On a mobile device, click on the More button on the bottom of your screen and choose Language Interpretation from within Zoom application. This is a separate channel that will allow you to hear English to Spanish translation concurrently. Please note, interpretation services are not available when you join our meeting by calling in. Our interpreters for tonight's meetings are Marcy Valdivieso and Claudia Lindgren. Marcy, please translate these directions on our English channel so our Spanish-speaking families can hear the instructions.
This is Claudia Lindgren, actually, but I'll do the directions. Thank you. Buenas noches. Bienvenidos a la Junta de la Mesa Directiva. Como ustedes saben, los servicios en español van a ser disponibles esta noche. De la manera que ustedes pueden tener acceso a este servicio, favor de fijarse en la pantalla donde vean el signo de mundo. Pueden hacer un clic y después de hacer el clic se les va a dar la opción de español. Ahí pueden hacer otro clic y de esa manera pueden escuchar la interpretación simultánea de esta junta. Ahora, si están llamando, también pueden tener acceso a ello viendo la pantalla de su teléfono. En la parte inferior, a mano derecha, ahí pueden elegir los servicios en español. Desgraciadamente, si llaman por teléfono, entonces los servicios de español simultáneos no van a estar disponibles. De otra manera, sí lo están. Muchas gracias.
Gracias. Specific instructions on how to participate in the meeting are located on the Board of Education webpage on the district's website, nvusd.org/board. Can we please start with an attendance roll call from Vera Morales, Executive Assistant?
Yes. Student Board Member Magaña,
Present.
Trustee Gonzalez Mares,
Present.
Trustee Jankowicz,
Present.
Trustee Gracia,
Present.
Trustee Reiser,
Present.
Trustee Water,
Present.
Trustee Shu,
Present.
Trustee Dooley,
Present.
quorum present. Thank you.
Thank you, Vera. Thank you for joining us tonight for our Napa Valley Unified School District Board meeting. Public participation remains virtual, online only, due to COVID-19 shelter-in-place order. We continue in uncharted territory as we deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. As trustees, we have returned to the boardroom in solidarity with our staff, given that our school campuses are now reopened for our students. However, in order to ensure access to our meeting without any limitations during the persisting pandemic, we are continuing with online remote access via Zoom for the public and guests. I would like to thank our employees, our families, and the entire NVUSD community for how you have supported each other and come together during these unprecedented times. This meeting tonight is in accordance with the open meeting rules in the state of California per the governor's order. I'm going to start tonight with some basic instructions on how we are going to be using Zoom and involve the members of the community. All Board of Trustees are on video throughout the entire board meeting from here in the boardroom. Due to special circumstances, the superintendent will be present by video only. Only staff members are present, but by audio only. Members of the community will not be on video and will be muted except during public comment. During public comment, any member of the community that wishes to speak must raise their hand using the raise hand feature in Zoom. You will be unmuted and will be provided 3 minutes to speak. There are 2 ways to make public comment within the time allotted for public comment on an eligible agenda item. To comment by video conference, click the raise your hand button to request to speak when public comment is being taken on the eligible agenda item. When it is your turn to speak, your name will be called out. You will then be unmuted during your turn and allowed to make public comments. After the allotted time, you will then be remuted. Instructions on how to raise your hand are available on the district website at nvusd.org/board. To comment by phone, you will be prompted to raise your hand by pressing *9 to request to speak when public comment is being taken on the eligible agenda item. When it is your turn to speak, the last 4 digits of your phone number will be called out. You will then be unmuted during your turn and allowed to make public comment. After the allotted time, you will then be remuted. Instructions on how to raise your hand by phone are available on the district's website at nvusd.org/board. In addition, community members were allowed to submit comments via email at publiccomment@nvusd.org up until 8 a.m. this morning. Public comment received after 8 a.m. the day of the scheduled meeting will not be read into the record. However, the public comment will be announced as received after the deadline, and it will become part of the meeting archive as long as it is received before the meeting is officially called to order. For every agenda item, I will prompt the meeting participants who have joined us via Zoom for public comment. Please follow the instructions just provided when you will like to comment on an item. We have been called to order and conducted our attendance roll call. We will go forward with our agenda. Okay, all right, so that being said, we are now on item E1, which is report on closed session items. Trustee Gracia.
Yes, in closed session, the board took action to approve the following staff recommendations. Effective July 1st, 2021, the following administrative appointments have been made. Sally Zickman to the position of principal for Vichy Elementary School, and Carliza Batalier to the position of principal for American Canyon Middle School. And that is all.
Thank you, Trustee Gracia, and welcome.
President Gonzalez Mares, both candidates are on the call, so just I want to congratulate both of them and welcome them. They both have served as interim this last year, and we're happy to welcome them to the NVUSD management team in these permanent positions.
Thank you, Dr. Massetti, for those words, and I'll just shorten and say welcome again. All right, let's move on to our item E2, which is our flag salute. I think tonight I will ask Trustee Water if she will lead us with the flag salute. Trustee Water. Thank you. We're going to item E3, announcement. This meeting is recorded for live streaming and archiving on the district YouTube channel. For a detailed review of any meeting agenda item, the archived video can be referenced, located on the district's webpage at nvusd.org. The public can join the virtual board meeting remotely via Zoom. Participation instruction and the process of public comment can be found on the district webpage. I will now move for a request of approval of agenda.
So moved.
A first by trustee Gracia and a second by trustee Dooley. Student board rep,
Aye.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody oppose or abstain? We have approved our agenda. Thank you. Approval of minutes.
So moved.
Second. First by trustee Gracia, second by trustee Dooley. Student board rep,
Aye.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed or need to abstain? Great. Thank you. Okay, Dr. Massetti, is there recognition of visitors and employee organizations tonight?
I do not see President Hector Gallegos from CSEA, and I do not see Ms. Leslie Walder, President of NAPS, but I do know that of the President Gail Young of NVA is here. Gail, would you like to unmute and say hello?
Yes, I'd love to say hello. It's really great to be able to see all of you. I can't wait until we can do this in person and I can actually meet all the board members in person. I'll go ahead and speak during public comment. I have a few words to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Gail, and welcome. We will now go into recognition of students of the month. We have tonight Napa Valley Independent Studies as well as American Canyon High School. We will start with Napa Valley Independent Studies.
Okay, well, good evening. As we pull up our students here. My name is Drew Herron and I'm the coordinator for the Napa Valley Independent Studies program. And I'd like to thank Dr. Massetti and the Board of Trustees for giving us the opportunity to celebrate our students here tonight. We have two great students who have been a part of our program, not a long time, but what I think it was really unique about both of them is that this is typically something that we debate a lot about at our staff meeting about who we're going to recommend. And I have to say, this is probably the easiest one we've ever done, which speaks to how exemplary these students have been performing this year. So our first one is Natalie Hahn. Natalie started an independent study last year on March 2nd, which was right before the whole shutdown happened. So since she's been with us, she's had she's had straight A's coming to NVIS and maintains a 3.3 GPA in high school. What I think, I hear a lot of her teachers say that how this was such an easy decision speaks not only to her academic ability, but also the wonderful person that she is. So I'd like to present to you Natalie Hahn.
Hello. Thank you to Mr. Heron, the whole school board committee, and Napa Valley Independent Studies for selecting me as Student of the Month. I am very honored. My name is Natalie Hahn, and I'm a senior this year. To give a little backstory, I switched to independent studies midway through my junior year due to my struggles with anxiety and depression. I had a rough time waking up in the morning and going to school because my anxiety was so bad. So my grades started dropping due to all this stress, and I knew I had to do something about it, as like junior year is the most important year of your school career. So I switched to independent studies, and it was one of the best decisions I could have made. And immediately my grades started to improve and my anxiety levels reduced. And Napa Valley Independent Studies has helped me a lot in the past year. The teachers are very supportive and always quick to respond to emails or any questions I have about my assignments. And I have lots of more time to go really in depth with my assignments and learn the material. And I have wonderful teachers here who support me and are always willing to help. in independent studies has prepared me well for my path to college, and because of this, I've been accepted into many of my top choice colleges. Thank you.
All right. Congratulations, Natalie. Okay, our next student is Colin Burke. Colin started this year at Independent Study and has made quite the impression with all of his teachers. Since he's been here at Independent Study, he's earned all A's and 1B. His overall GPA is a 3.2. And he definitely is a student that has a career path and lots of goals. After he finishes and graduates this year, he'll be joining the Army. He'll serve our country for the next 4 years. And after that, he will be looking to go to college. Like a lot of our students, Colin does have a member of his family who is an alumni of Napa Valley Independent Studies. And so his stepsister came through our program years ago. The one thing that really impresses me about Colin, getting to know him this year, is that he really does advocate for himself, which I think is a great life skill to have this early on in his young life. And he's not afraid to email me or his teachers when he has questions. So I'd like to present to you our student of the month, Colin Burke.
Hello, my name is Colin Burke, and I'm a senior at Napa Valley Independent Studies. Before I continue with my speech, I'd like to thank Dr. Musetti, the superintendent, and the board of trustees for this honor, which I'm very appreciative of. I just want to say, before I came to Napa Valley Independent Studies, I've been to a lot of different schools, for many different issues. I was at traditional schools, I've been to military schools, and I've been to a couple different alternative schools. And nothing ever really seemed to fit my learning style until I came to Napa Valley Independent Studies. The way the classes are conducted, the way the teaching's conducted, it just fit my style perfectly. The two things that I've benefited most from this school is the excellent teaching that's provided, and I'd also like to take this time to thank two teachers in particular. That would be Holly Gersner and Suzanne Quinlan, due to their willingness to help any student in need and their energy in the classroom. And also what I'm also appreciative of that the school offers is the independence, allowing the student to really get in depth on the assignments and get a full understanding of what we're actually doing. And like Mr. Heron said, after graduation, I'm going to be getting shipped out to Fort Benning, Georgia. That'll be June 28th, and I'm going to be joining the Army. I will be entering the Army as an infantry recruit. And I'd just like to thank the understanding and the willingness to help by Napa Valley Independent Studies. I'd like to thank the staff, all the teachers, and yeah, thank you for your time.
All right. Congratulations, Colin. Thank you.
Thank you, Napa Valley Independent Studies, and for the students of the month. Congratulations. We will now move on to American Canyon High School. I don't know if Principal Crystal Lopez is here.
Thank you, and congratulations, Colin and Natalie. Good evening, Dr. Musetti and the NVUSD School Board. Thank you for giving us this opportunity once again to recognize our fabulous students of the month. Our student of the month for January is Janiyah Johnson, and her math teacher, Ms. Howell, nominated her for student of the month in January. Janiyah Johnson is a model student at American Canyon High School. She collaborates with others and patiently helps them. She makes learning a priority and takes time to fully understand material and give her best. In calculus, She has spent the time needed to create organized and beautiful notes in addition to utilizing class time wisely. She goes above and beyond and sets up tutoring sessions with her teacher where she asks clarifying questions until she understands the material. She is excelling in her work, and her work ethic has helped her bridge the gap from Math 3 to calculus. Outside of class, she is a role model to those around her, being a cheerleader, member of the track and field team, in addition to being president of the Black Student Union and a member of the Natural Beauty Club. She is a great student, wonderful person, and fabulous role model for younger students and children. I'm so happy that she is being acknowledged for all her hard work and this honor of Student of the Month for Napa Valley Unified School District. All right, Janaya.
Good evening. Oh, can you guys see me?
Yes, we can see you and hear you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Janaya Johnson, and I'm a senior attending American Canyon High School. And first, I would like to thank the school board for this opportunity. I appreciate the nomination and the recognition of my academic achievements tonight. I also would like to thank Mr. Song, my counselor, for supporting me these past 4 years. Through the ups and downs in my life and academics, I can say he was always there, giving me words of encouragement and wisdom. Lastly, I would like to thank Ms. Goff, Ms. Howell, who nominated me, Ms. Beloyan, Thorne, Campoy, Nelson, and Mr. Pascaletti for your impact on my life. You all have helped me become the great student I am now. I really want to thank you for always believing in my potential when I did not. I am truly prepared for my college education due to your instructions throughout my years at American Canyon High School. From the beginning of my freshman year, as you may have heard, I was involved in cheer. I was a member of the BSU at the time. I was in Link Crew, and I was in other clubs as well. And I soon became involved in track and field my sophomore year. So cheer and track pretty much became my life. And then my junior year of high school, I was selected to help my school become certified. And now as a senior, I'm the president of the BSU. I run track and I work a part-time job. So after high school, I plan to attend the University of Southern California. I am currently waiting on their decision. And I plan on either majoring in pre-nursing or biology and minoring in business because I would like to own my own clinic as an OBGYN. Again, I would like to thank you for this opportunity. It definitely means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Janaya. Our Student of the Month for February is Samrit Kaira, and Samrit was nominated by Ms. Harris. And Ms. Harris, this is what Ms. Harris had to say about her. I would like to nominate Samrit because she reached out to our social worker, Ms. Roxana Plancarte, and myself about the need to do more for our students' mental health. We had multiple Zooms, the three of us, talking about how to best support our students. She then reached out to many other clubs to get involved that she knew were wanting to accomplish similar goals. As a result of her vision, we now have a wellness coalition consisting of the Wellness Center, Leadership, NHS, Wolf Prince, Admin, Teens Connect, Active Minds, and American Canyon High School Counseling. None of this would have happened without her voice. In a time when people are more isolated than ever before, she has created a chance for all of us to work together to create something to help bring students the support that they need. All right, Samrit.
Hi everyone, my name is Samrit Kara and I'm a senior at American Canyon High School. First and foremost, I am humbled and would like to thank the superintendent, Dr. Massetti, and the school board for this opportunity. It's truly such an honor to be recognized as one of the students of the month for a school and community that I am so passionate to be a part of. Thank you to my counselor, Mr. Som, who has been an important mentor throughout these 4 years. I can recall so many instances where I would doubt my capabilities and he would assure me that I'm doing well and that I need to be proud of myself. He really emphasized the importance of confidence and owning your achievements. A huge shout out to Miss Segerquist, Miss Vu, Miss Hester, Mr. Rowell, Miss Campoy, Miss Gustafson, Miss Davis, and Miss Harris for guiding me and always pushing me to strive in a way that I could realize my potential. The warmth and uplifting energy that they embody continues to inspire me every single day. Throughout my junior and senior year, I've been a part of the National Honor Society, and I'm currently the vice president of the club, as well as senior class vice president at our school. I'm a leadership student this year and have taken 2 consecutive years of sports medicine. I volunteered at Kaiser for a year prior to the quarantine period, and I've learned a lot through my volunteer experiences. Being a part of something that serves a greater cause allows you to build this deep connection with others, and I just find this to be a very beautiful thing. I've done various sports here at my high school, including tennis, cross country, basketball, and track and field. After I graduate, I plan to major in neuroscience in hopes of going to medical school and pursuing neurology. Thank you so much for listening, and I really appreciate this wonderful opportunity.
Thank you, Samrit.
Thank you, American Canyon High School, and congratulations to the students of the month. We will proceed with our next agenda item. This is our public comments on non-agenda items. I will first ask Trustee Gracia to please read the public comment received on non-agenda items via email.
We did receive one public comment on non-agenda items via email that was submitted before tonight's board meeting. Dear Dr. Mercetti and Napa Valley Unified School District Board of Trustees, this letter, endorsed by the stakeholders listed below, seeks to inform and hopefully encourage changes to how music classes are offered at the middle school level in the Napa Valley Unified School District. Over the last 3 years, staffing and music class offerings have been severely reduced at the middle school level in the district. This will drastically impact the overall quality of the music programs at NVUSD schools at all levels, including the elementary school and high schools. The reduction in classes offered also leads to many students not being able to take music classes even if they want to. This especially impacts ELL student population and raises questions about equity and student access. One of the unintended consequences of the decision to reduce the middle school daily schedule from 7 classes to 6 was a drastic cut to the art and music programs offered to middle school students. Harvest Middle School faced a particularly drastic cut, which resulted in the school eliminating an entire full-time music teacher from their staff. Redwood Middle School also faced a reduction in staffing and music class offerings to their thriving program. Over the last summer, Harvest Middle School again faced a reduction in music classes offered as their last full-time music teacher was required to split their position into a 0.4 FTE position at Harvest and 0.6 FTE position at River, due to the River Middle School music teacher leaving over the summer and not being replaced by a full-time music teacher. Some music classes were also eliminated from the RMS schedule this summer. These cuts have led to severe limitations on what music classes are available for students at these middle schools. There have also been severe limits put on which students can take music classes in the district due to a reduction in the classes offered and who is allowed to take them. ELL students have particularly been impacted by the limitations put on who is able to take elective classes. While many ELL students needing to take support classes to raise their language scores, many of them have had their elective taken away. This leads to students not having access to any music education if they do not qualify to be redesignated. The Every Student Succeeds Act includes music as a subject that is included in a well-rounded education. There has also been research that shows that music education benefits ELL students. In 2016, NVUSD adopted an arts education master plan that was dedicated to expanding and maintaining high-quality music and arts education to students in the district. This plan was put together in partnership with the Arts Council Napa Valley Education Alliance. Equity and access to a high-quality music education were driving forces behind this plan. This plan has yet to be fully implemented. NVUSD high schools have long been known to have extremely high-quality music programs in instrumental and choral music. Middle school programs are integral to the success of high school programs because students who participate in middle school music are more likely to want to take music in high school, and they will also have knowledge needed to be successful as freshmen in high school. If the students are not allowed to develop their musical skills in middle school, they will be far behind other students in high school, which will eventually lead to high school programs that are less successful due to all of the remediation needed. Also, offering fewer and fewer music classes in middle school will impact the number of incoming freshmen who are interested in participating in high school music. Music classes at middle school level have become standard offerings in many school districts. With NVUSD facing declining enrollment, there is an opportunity to use our strong music programs to draw students and families to enroll in NVUSD. If families and students know they are sustainable, high-quality music programs at the middle school level that will consistently be part of a student's education, they might be more likely to enroll in NVUSD schools and stay in those schools instead of leaving for other districts or private schools. The slow dismantling of the middle school music programs in NVUSD, intentional or not, is causing concern for the stakeholders listed below regarding how much longer the district can offer a high-quality, diverse, and sustainable music education for students from the elementary level all the way up through high school. Some of these stakeholders have seen similar slow declines in music class offerings lead to an entire district program suffering a large decline in quality or slowly being eliminated altogether. The stakeholders listed below will happily work with the district to find solutions that make sure that NVUSD continues to offer a high-quality music education at the middle school level, which will help to maintain the high-quality high school program NVUSD currently has. One suggestion is the board taking action to encourage that at least one full-time music teacher position is at each middle school site. If positions and classes are only offered based on yearly class enrollment, a down year could have severe impacts on a school's program far into the future. Fully implementing the Arts Education Master Plan that NVUSD adopted in 2016 would also make a positive impact on the district music program, as well as other art programs for students of NVUSD. Links have been provided at the end of this letter to the NVUSD Arts Education Master Plan, relevant ESSA information, and a small sample of the articles detailing benefits of music education. This letter was written before the recommendation to the NVUSD School Board of Trustees to cut another 1.0 FTE music position for the 2021-2022 school year at the board meeting on February 11th. Thank you for your consideration in this matter. Sincerely, Brian Beggs. And there are also several other signers. And that is all.
Great, thank you, Trustee Gracia. Members of the audience may address the board on any school-related matter that is not on the agenda. The board will not take action on any issue raised during this section of the agenda, inasmuch as board action is limited to posted agenda items. Speakers are requested to limit their comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. Mr. Ruiz, do we have public comment?
President Gonzalez-Mares, we do have a few public comments. We will start with Evan Virgilini.
Hello. As a lifelong community member and a current teacher, I've been sitting in on our middle school redesign task force meetings, and I got to sit in on the town hall on Monday as well. Throughout these meetings, it seemed as though task force members were being guided towards a single solution. So I was really glad to see the district let the community present ideas on Monday and Tuesday, and I hope that that continues. I also hope the task force is able to consider a broader set of solutions in order to promote both program excellence and equity in our community, but while still meeting our financial needs. I have a better understanding of those and the district's dire financial situation after I was able to sit through the finance committee meeting yesterday, but I still believe there are multiple possibilities, not just one. Many potential solutions came up on Monday that the district did not include in their presentation to the task force last week, including moving or condensing programs rather than dissolving them, and or closing one of the other large middle schools instead of Harvest. I encourage members and leaders of the task force to consider integrating these into their discussion. It's important for our community that we seriously consider a broader set of viable options, no matter the conclusion that we ultimately come to. I so appreciate the effort and the thinking that members of the task force are putting into finding an optimal solution, as well as the careful attention the trustees are paying to this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Mr. Ruiz.
Yes, Gail Young.
Good evening, trustees, Dr. Musetti, and all the stakeholders in our TK-12 district. I'm Gail Young, President of Napa Valley Educators Association, and I represent teachers, nurses, and counselors. I really dislike this time of year. For certificated employees, it means the possibility of receiving a notification that you will no longer be employed by NVUSD on June 17th. It's tough. You still need to finish the school year pretending nothing's wrong. This year, at the last board meeting, you as a board unanimously approved the reduction of 39 credentialed positions. That is 39 people who will no longer be working for NVUSD. Tomorrow, Dana Page and I will hold the first of 2 informational meetings for the teachers that are receiving a layoff notice. It is one more difficult thing in a very difficult year. Please note that these teachers, along with the other 800 NVEA members, have gone above and beyond to continue the education of students in this district. They pivoted, they learned new ways to deliver robust instruction and to balance the challenging method of in-person and virtual simultaneous teaching. Can you imagine wearing a mask while delivering instruction to the device in front of you and to the student sitting at the back of the room? It's really hard. There are many big issue items currently at the forefront of our district: a severe decline in enrollment, the need to close a middle school, program shifts, and did I mention a pandemic with lots of government imposed restrictions? But this year and next, our ADA funding is held harmless, and both the state and federal government have given additional money to ensure education happens. I looked back on what I said to you last year during this time. The interests stated then still hold true today with some additional context. My members and I, your certificated employees, have some interests that need to be shared. We have an interest in job security. We have an interest in making a living wage, being able to afford to live in the town that we work. We have an interest in quality, dare I say robust education, having the resources and training to do the very best job for our students. And it's not simultaneous teaching. We have an interest in safety, being able to do our jobs without the fear of illness or physical harm. We have an interest in adequate facilities, spaces to teach that are clean and safe and structurally sound. We have an interest in fiscal solvency, but that doesn't mean a growing district reserve. Our district opened in-person instruction in October. Our employees have been on the front line ensuring there is some routine and sense of normalcy for our students. We've done what has been asked. There needs to be some give. We all want COVID to be over. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Our next speaker, Mr. Ruiz.
Yes, Justin Hamilton Hall.
Thank you so much. First off, I'm gonna get 2 things for myself. The first one is welcome back our board members in the boardroom. Second one is that are you guys gonna be looking at American Middle School #1 and see are you guys gonna install new security gate around American Middle School? So give me more detail. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Mr. Ruiz.
Yes, Megan Burton.
Hi, good evening, trustees, Dr. Musetti, and other members of Napa Valley Unified. My name is Megan Burton, and I would like to begin by expressing my appreciation for your dedication to the well-being of our students and community in considering the redesign of middle schools within the district. I'm here tonight as a member of the Middle School Redesign Task Force and as a staff member at River School to express deep concern over district leadership advocating for one specific option early in the task force's analysis of options. I understand the urgency of addressing our district's financial situation and appreciate that we need to make tough decisions at this time. However, I believe that option C, which would close 2 middle schools and 1 elementary school, has been advocated for by district leadership prematurely and was prior to receiving feedback from the redesign task force or the community town hall meetings. Option C is extremely disruptive of multiple portions of our community, and any effort on the district's part to advocate for any option can easily be seen as an effort to sway the committee's final decision. I appreciate the guiding principles being used to analyze prospective options, but agree with Dr. Orlando Carreon's comments in this week's town hall meetings that equity needs to be analyzed more deeply through each of the lenses of the other 3 principles. I believe that we can find a solution to declining enrollment that would emphasize equity amongst all of our middle school students, support the diversity and needs of our students, as well as be much less disruptive to so many students and families. I believe that River School can and should be part of the solution to the declining enrollment of NVUSD. River School can be primarily a neighborhood school at full capacity, yet, like other middle schools in town, allow and support a percentage of open enrollment. The small size of River School, in addition to its strong program and culture, would continue to draw families, as it has for many, many years, from private schools as well as surrounding communities. Middle school students in Napa need to have choices and different options available to them at this critical time of their lives, and many students need the environment offered within a small school setting. Again, I'm very appreciative of the hard work and dedication of the board members, district leadership, and the Middle School Redesign Task Force. I look forward to robust conversations and problem solving in the aim of providing choice and multiple opportunities and environments for our middle school students. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next speaker, Mr. Ruiz.
Yes, President Gonzalez-Mares, that concludes our public comment at this time.
Thank you. We will now go into item H of our agenda, which is our report. So here we have our Board of Education and Student Board Representative reports. We'll start with Student Board Rep. Carla Magaña.
Nothing from me tonight. Just happy to be here along with everyone else. Thank you.
Thank you. It's always good to have you here. All right, we'll start with the board. Anybody would like to start?
Sure.
Cindy? Oh.
That's fine. All right, I'll kick it off. So February 16th, I attended the middle school task force. 17th was the curriculum committee meeting. The 18th, I attended the Pope Valley School Board meeting where I received their vote for Napa County CSBA delegate. On the 23rd, I attended the virtual authors event. 24th, I attended part of the Howell Mountain School Board meeting where I made a pitch for my candidacy for Napa County CSBA delegate. On the 25th, I attended the What is All This Modeling in Math parent engagement session. On March 2nd, I attended the middle school task force meeting. On the 3rd, the Silverado Middle School Parent Club meeting. On the 8th, I reviewed the NVUSD town hall that happened that night. And then on the 9th, I attended the NVUSD middle school town hall as well. And then on the 10th, I attended the Howell Mountain School Board meeting where I received their vote for Napa County CSBA delegate. And that's all I have to report.
Thank you, Trustee Gracia. Trustee Water, did you want to go next?
Sure. Like Trustee Gracia, I attended the 2 redesign meetings on the 16th of February, 2nd of March. Also the two town hall meetings on the 8th and 9th this week. I also attended the authors night on the 23rd, curriculum committee that you'll hear about on the 17th of February. I've been answering lots of communications from people, emails. I have gotten a lot of communications from my neighborhood about the Gray Haven Center that's being proposed for the Eliza Yacht Building on Seminary Street. It's a couple blocks from my house and half a block from Shearer School. And that's taken up a great deal of time from people who apparently think I'm on the city council. And then I saw something in the paper today that's close to my heart. Vintage High School, 2 Vintage High School students won the local Poetry Out Loud contest. And that is, they are, hang on, Soria Seja and Emmy Ordonez Enos. And this is a national contest. And I had a student who went pretty far in it. And they'll be traveling to Sacramento. And the students' performances are just incredible. And I also saw, it's going to be in the paper tomorrow, I think, that Vanessa Chen, who we heard of before, is the first female Eagle Scout in Boy Scout history in Napa County. And she'll be in the paper tomorrow. So I think our students are doing very well.
Thank you, Trustee Water.
Sure.
Yep, Trustee Riser, please.
I have been busy since our last board meeting. On February 16th, I attended also the Middle School Redesign Task Force Session 3. February 17th, the Curriculum and Student Support Committee meeting. I'm going to go a little out of chronological order to group my site visits together. I really wanted to get out to see schools and teachers and students in action. And I started with the 5 sites that are within Area 4, which is the area that I represent. On February 18th, I visited Snow School with Principal Olivia McCormick. February 19th, Harvest Middle School with Principal Martha Franco. February 25th, I went to Donaldson Way with Principal Marilyn Abalon. The 25th also to American Canyon Middle School with newly confirmed permanent principal, Dr. Carliza Batalan. February 26th to Napa Junction with Principal Noreen Montgomery. March 9th, I visited Silverado Middle School with Principal Jen Cole. And this morning, I visited Redwood Middle School with Principal Marianne Christofferson. I just was really grateful to have that opportunity to spend seeing the teachers and staff members working so hard in the classroom, keeping the campuses safe, integrating amazing technology. The split focus of the roomers and Zoomers makes me cross-eyed almost just to watch it. So my hat goes off to all the teachers that are just juggling really demanding demands. And just was really struck by the professionalism and the dedication and the positivity and just the willingness to go above and beyond to track students of concern, follow up with home visits. I heard about things like that with kids that were struggling with engagement or attendance. So just overall, very proud to be a part of this organization and really grateful for all the hardworking employees and that are serving our students so well in such difficult circumstances. So backtracking a little bit, on February 20th, I attended sort of all-day workshops that were part of the Black History Month virtual celebration that was sponsored or put on by the Rainbow Action Network. There was a wonderful story hour, a discussion among faith leaders about how to be partners in supporting racial equity, a discussion entitled How to Be Actively Anti-Racist. And then the most impactful session for me was a roundtable discussion that was entitled Growing Up Black in Napa. It was moderated by author Alex Brown, and there was a panel of 5 young Black members of our community, all but one of which were current students, but not all of them were students at NVUSD. They responded to questions that they themselves had generated ahead of time. What's it like growing up in a community where not a lot of people look like you? How does intersectionality affect you? Like, what is it like to be a Black woman or to be a woman that is both Black and Latinx? Or what it's like to be a Black man in Napa? Have you found allyship here? And what are you hoping to see? What changes are you hoping to see in our community? And I will be brief, but I will say that it hurt my heart to listen to that discussion. And I want to thank all those panelists for their honesty and bravery in sharing their truth with our community, because it's a truth that we need to hear. To hear that students are being called, in their words, the N-word with a hard R. To hear how their race is experienced, that they are experiencing it as a strength and an asset within their own personal sense of themselves, but their experience of their race within the community and within the schools really came across also as a pretty heavy burden. And it was a real gut punch to hear one of the panelists say that he and another student, two panelists together, had a conversation, and they both agreed that when they graduated, they wanted to leave Napa and never come back, that did not feel like home to them. So I'll leave off that topic just with the statement that it's very clear that our community has a lot of work to do. And I want to thank Rainbow Action Network, and in particular those individuals that that told it like it is for them, so that we could hear it, and because that's the first step to us doing better for them and for ourselves, because I don't think that's who we want to be. February 23rd, I attended the virtual authors night event, and I'll be brief, but this event, this series is so inspiring and amazing. So the author Pablo Cartaya, and he talked a lot about his writing process, and the one particular point that he made that I thought was so great was it took him 5 years to write one of his books, and he counted up 23 revisions that he had done for one book, and did the math and said that worked out to be about 6,900 pages just to end up with one 300-page book. I thought that was so important to hear. He also spoke to issues of identity and the importance of representation, and the other, and what he called the inherited erasure of the pressure to assimilate. And just gave the example of, he was so excited to start school in kindergarten. He went to school in Florida, and on the first day he introduced himself as Pablo, and the teacher said, "Oh, you mean Paul?" And he looked at her confused, but that was sort of the beginning of his understanding of how things worked for him as a Latinx student. So there's just so many profound and important lessons related to the writing and art and expression, but also identity and perseverance. So I'm very grateful to Assistant Superintendent Andrew Jennings and the district for supporting this program. On March 2nd, I attended the Middle School Redesign Task Force Session 4. On March 4th, Trustee Chu will speak to this a little bit, but we had a introductory meeting with Trustee Chu and with the American Canyon representative to the Napa County Office of Education Board of Trustees, Cindy Biederman. On March 5th and 6th, I completed the first course in the Masters in Governance series for the California School Board Association, with classes called Foundation of Effective Governance and Setting Direction. I also listened in on both town halls for the community town halls for middle school redesign, the one on March 8th in English and the one on March 9th in Spanish. I was very grateful that we had translation for the Spanish one, because I'm not a Spanish speaker, but I really wanted to hear all of the community input that was shared. And then this afternoon, right before this board meeting, I attended and listened in on a meeting of a fairly newly formed group called the Equity and Inclusivity Council. And their goal, it's mostly teachers and a few administrators, I think, so far, brought together kind of at a grassroots level with a goal to making our schools safe and equitable and inclusive spaces for students of all identities. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Trustee Reiser. Trustee Chu?
So I also attended all of the middle school redesign meetings that the other trustees have gone to. On March 4th, Trustee Reiser mentioned that we had a meet and greet with the Napa County Office of Education board member representing American Canyon, Cindy Biederman. And we mainly, it was mostly a meet and greet because we thought it was important for us to get to know each other, being representative of the same area. But we did talk a little bit about how we're using Measure H funds, how the district has done a good job in rolling out the one-to-one tech devices, and also equity spending in our district. And also a little bit about the middle school redesign task force, because Cindy is actually a grandmother of our district. Her kids also went through the district, so she's heavily invested in what's happening in our district. Her oldest granddaughter that she's taking care of in American Canyon will be at American Canyon Middle School, so she's definitely interested in what happens at that level. On March 5th through 6th, I started my Master in Governance training with Course 1 from the California School Board Association. On March 8th, I also attended the California School Board Association webinar on redistricting, because I think we're going to have to look at that again at the end of this year or whenever the census data comes out. On March 10th, yesterday, we had a finance committee meeting, which I think we'll hear more about later. And today, this morning, I also attended the American Canyon Chamber of Commerce Government Affairs Committee just to give an update on what we do at the district. I also, like Trustee Reiser, I continued my school visits, this time starting to look at middle school. So I got a chance to visit River Campus visited with Principal Catherine Adams and really experienced the culture of that school, very unique compared to what I'm used to at American Canyon Middle School. So I really appreciated that look, that in-depth knowledge. And I also got to visit, revisit Canyon Oaks Elementary School, and that's where my kids went to school, but we have a new Principal Stephanie Vasquez. And I just wanted to end by sharing with the board all the wonderful things that I think our community has come together to do during this pandemic. And my experience, of course, is from my children. And at Canyon Oaks, there is a new program called Coach for the Future. And this was a collaborative effort between the Napa County Office of Education, College and Career Readiness Program, with the American Canyon High School teacher Anna Eshu and Canyon Oaks Elementary teachers Julie Meyer-Houston, Innie Singarath, and Elizabeth Corey, with support from, of course, Principal Vasquez. And what they did was they thought, well, you know, these kids are doing all the academic stuff during the school day, synchronous work, asynchronous work. Can they bring something else to those kids? So the students are actually part of a class that usually does some internship outside of in the community. Well, this year you can't because there's a pandemic. And so a lot of businesses were not accepting them as interns. So they were very creative and said, why don't we help the elementary school that's basically right next door? So they created these after school classes that they would give to the students in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. That's the pilot right now. And they would be teaching, I don't know what the class size is, but I do know my youngest one is in that class. Subjects on computers, you know, what are the innards of computers, shortcuts to help them navigate how to use computers, marine biology, healthy eating habits, just things like that. I think the offering is like 6 classes. But I really appreciated that the community and different agencies came together to make this wonderful after school program to kind of give some sense of like something different for these kids and something for them to really, you know, think about enjoying. While I think that the students at ACHS are actually learning how to teach. and actually on a virtual setting. I'm really hoping that, this will get them interested in maybe a teaching career, which I know that we need good teachers, and I've listened in on at least my son's class, and I'm really grateful that they did a great job. They did a really great job in delivering the material. My kid was engaged, and I think it was a great experience all around. So kudos to that whole entire new program. I think it just shows what we can do during a pandemic. And that concludes my report.
Right. Yeah, it's very neat. Thank you, Trustee Chu.
I'll follow that.
Okay.
Thank you, Trustee Chu. That was very interesting to hear about. I too attended the middle school redesign task force meetings in February 16th and March 2nd, as well as the town halls this Monday and Tuesday in both English and Spanish. I do want to say that I think it's incredibly valuable that we have the ability to provide the Spanish language primary presentation rather than having it all be through the interpretation services. Listening to that, to the Spanish presentation through the interpreting services was it was something that I wanted to do, to hear from the community, and the interpretation services were really well done. But it's also good for me to experience that rather than kind of taking for granted the kind of primary English language presentation. So I'm very glad that we were able to provide that. I too, along with Trustees Reiser and Chu, attended the Masters in Governance course. The lessons or the foundations of effective governance and setting direction. And just in a kind of small world personal note, one of the presenters was someone that I have known since I was 2 years old, and his wife was the director of the preschool that I went to many years ago. So it was great to see him again, and again, small world. I wanted to kind of end on just some of the lessons from the Masters in Governance course. And I think at this point we all have at least gone through course one, but the focus on the first one was kind of our role as the board in the governance system, the governance or the system of the district as the governance team, and the idea that we are here to set clear and high expectations for the organization, and to create the conditions for success under those expectations, to hold the system accountable to them, to build the collective will to reach those high expectations, and then to learn together as we see the outcomes of those processes, so that we can, as the cycle of governance continues, we can make sure that we're moving toward progress and higher levels of student achievement. I think it's hard when we have everyday decisions that the board has to make, that to make sure that we pull back and focus on our role in this system. And so, I'm grateful for the course and for having the connection we have with CSBA in order to kind of remind us of that 30,000-foot view that we have to take. But yeah, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Trustee Dooley.
I too attended the middle school redesign task force on the 16th of February and again on March 2nd. I listened to the KVON segment that featured Dr. Massetti. She spoke about reopening of our schools and the transition to phase 3, our collaborative relationship with our labor partners. She addressed the declining enrollment issue and its impact on the school closure discussions, and reiterated the importance of fiscally feasible and sustainable solution, facilities management, and the correlation to program excellence. I continue to enjoy our author series. There is quite a bit of student participation and their questions did not disappoint. Middle school redesign town hall on Monday evening and again on Tuesday evening. Yesterday, I attended the finance committee meeting and I too have been engaged in a fair amount of community outreach this week and last week and probably next week.
Okay, thank you, everybody. All right, we will now move forward with board representatives' reports. So we'll start with Curriculum and Student Support Committee.
Hi there. Well, as I said, we met in February, I think it was the 16th, and Mr. Gracia chaired it very efficiently. And here's my report. We had an overview of, we talked about LPAC testing, and they gave us an overview of LPAC, one of our acronyms, English Language Proficiency Assessment of California. It replaces the old CELT test, California English Language Development Test, which I used to give. And all English language learners have to master 4 domains: their listening, speaking, reading, and writing. The test can take from 50 minutes to 3 hours, depending on how advanced the student is. So the more English the student knows, the longer the test is. 1 is beginning, 2 and 3 are moderate, 4 is well-developed language. Level 2 has some teacher input, level 3 has parent input. Level 4 is very challenging and needs a STAR test in reading at the 40th percentile or above. The tests were halted last spring, but we started them up in the fall, and they're administered online on a secure browser. Some are one-on-one, some are in groups. What we want to be able to do, of course, is reclassify our primary language other than English speakers into English proficient. And I guess it's a good time for me to point out that there are many languages in the Napa Valley Unified School District, particularly at American Canyon. A friend of mine taught down there, and she had an ELL, and she had 12 languages in her class. One innovation is calling in our retired teachers to give the test, which the test has to be given by a teacher. We centralized it. It used to be organized at the site, and given the time-consuming nature of the test, centralizing was a good idea, and the only way we would get 100% tested by May 31st. The regular teachers then are able to concentrate on teaching and Zooming and not testing, and making an appointment is easy. Student comes into the school, gets tested by one teacher, that's it. And there's very high support from the tech team for the K2 test takers, who are young children after all. And I believe you asked about some sort of, do we do any recognition when they're redesignated? And we would like to have a redesignation ceremony for the students when possible, because this is a big achievement. And then we talked about, LCAP, the LCAP basics, supplemental and concentration funds are based on the percent of unduplicated pupils enrolled. And unduplicated persons are English learners, students who qualify for free or reduced meal programs, foster youth. We call them unduplicated because they're only counted once in one category, even though they may qualify for all 3. And the current LCAP goals, come on, we know what they are: increase rates of college and career readiness. This will be on the test. Provide equitable access and opportunities for all. Develop educational programs that support healthy living. And goal 1, we have staffing, professional development, material supplies, student family services. Goal 2 is effective employee relations and resource management. We have competitive compensation so we can attract excellent staff. Professional growth stipends, new certified employee academy, training for IBPs, et cetera. Goal 3, communication support. We're doing better at targeting, Parent Square, parent liaison for 2-way communication with parents and community, and town halls, which we all attended. And we're also, we've gotten, much better at, with the Spanish translation. Efficient asset management. We are trying, includes demographic studies to track enrollment trends. We give the public information about Measure 8 projects, centralized enrollment. We annually evaluate programs as to whether or not they work. We assess the feasibility of a parcel tax or bond measure, but we also learned a lot about people's perception of the school district. That was very useful. and equity-centered leadership and inclusive organizational culture. We have childcare at all district meetings, translation and interpretation, as I said, for all district documents and meetings. And we have a commitment to restorative practices, interest-based problem solving, council for certificated problem solving, and then good governance and policy implementation. Well, just look how soon all of us will have completed masters in governance training. How's that? And as you said, our links with the CSBA. And there's a strong relationship between our goals and the state goals, of course. We discussed Professional Learning Day, which is tomorrow. And I looked, there's like 106 course offerings, very exciting. We talked about in-person summer school at Phillips, McPherson, and Shearer. We'll be talking about that tonight. And we're going to have extended credit recovery for secondary in June and July. We also talked about math task force, reading full-length books, placing the same emphasis on English as is on the math task force. We discussed the family resource centers at 3 of our schools. And at the end of the meeting, a middle school math teacher, Evan Versalini, we heard from him tonight, commented that he appreciated the time for reflection, the math task force, and was looking forward to the Professional Learning Day. And if I have left anything out, tell me.
No, that was very thorough.
Okay, you're welcome. And you get to do it next time. Okay, it's you.
I felt like I was in the meeting, Trustee Water, so thank you.
Okay.
That's really good.
Well, I have to make
information.
up for that time where I left my notes at home. Okay.
Thank you. It's really important work that we're doing here. All right, so now moving on to Facilities and Technology Committee.
We will meet next week. We have not yet met.
Great, thank you. Finance Committee, we did meet and I'll have.
We met
Christine-
yesterday. We attended the Finance Committee meeting where Mr. Mangwala reviewed the second interim report. We discussed the economy, state funding proposals, cash reserves, the financial implication of declining enrollment, and the assumptions used for second interim. We ended with a discussion of the challenges ahead. Mr. Mangwala will be providing everyone with a detailed overview later in the agenda.
Great, thank you, Trustee Jankowicz. Policy Committee,
We have not yet met.
Special Education Committee Advisory Committee.
We are meeting on March 15th.
Great, thank you. City of American Canyon Liaison Representatives.
We have not met.
City of Napa Liaison Representatives.
Not met.
Town of Yountville Liaison Representatives.
We have not met.
Okay, we are now on to, we have a lot to say. So now we continue with our superintendent and executive staff. So Dr. Massetti.
Great, thank you. Thank you for your thorough reports, trustees. So this has been, for me and my executive team, a week of reflection. It was almost a year ago today, on a Friday afternoon, where we had to call an emergency board meeting in our boardroom where you all are, in order to make the decision to enact a school closure of all of our school campuses due to what was then a little-known virus called COVID-19. Amidst many, many questions, uncertainties, and with the safety of our students, faculty, staff, friends, family, and community at the highest priority, we all of a sudden found ourselves entering into a distance learning emergency model. And I do want to call the spring of last year a reaction to what was an emergency. At the time that we sat in that board meeting on Friday afternoon, we thought we were only going to be closed through April 13th. For about a month. And as you all know, the story is very, very different than that. Looking back on all that's happened, I continue to just be so grateful and in awe of this community. So many of you, some of our trustees who are doing those site visits to get to learn about our schools have been seeing our hardworking teachers and staff and all the students, doing hybrid learning almost a year later. And together we've overcome many, many obstacles. And again, I think we like to repeat it, maybe every board meeting, we're one of the first districts in the state to open in a hybrid model in as early as October during this pandemic. And I continue to be very, very proud as the superintendent of schools around that fact. Our phase 3 has been going really, really well. We have almost 40% of TK through 12th grade students back in the classroom for hybrid instruction, while a majority, the 60%, continue to experience robust distance learning, and that will continue to be an option through the end of the school year. The majority of our teachers are vaccinated or are in the process, which is also really exciting. And this is the third week in a row that we're reporting no staff infections. And so we continue to track that data. And we're really, really grateful for our safe school operations that have made sure that we've been able to keep students and staff safe during these unusual times that are starting to feel like they're returning back to normal. I also want to thank all of the community members, parents, teachers, staff who attended the middle school redesign input sessions that we held this week on Monday and Tuesday. Like some of the trustees have echoed, I'm very grateful that we've adopted the practice of always paralleling a Spanish input night when we're going to go out to the public with an important topic. I'm grateful as a bilingual and bicultural superintendent that I'm able to do that. And we had over almost 160 Spanish participants on Tuesday night, which I'm really grateful to report. And we had over 300 at the English night. And so all in all, close to 500 participants across those two input sessions with dozens and dozens of speakers on both nights. And so I'm grateful for people showing up around this very difficult, complex, and challenging issue. And I'm looking forward to taking that input and working through it with the Middle School Redesign Task Force during our session 5 of 6 sessions, which will be next Tuesday on March 16th. I also want to just continue to express gratitude for the author series night. This is also a new practice that we brought into the district, wanting to build the spirit of community during the pandemic. And I think it's doing exactly what we intended. I'm very grateful for the instructional team who've lined up some incredible authors, and I've loved them all. And I loved kicking off the series earlier in the year. But I do have to say I have a little bit of bias on this last one because it was my fellow Cuban-American Pablo Cartaya from Miami, who I think did a great job for our kids and families. And so I want to thank Assistant Superintendent Pat Andrew Jennings for her and her team continuing to develop high quality programming around the author series. And lastly, I also want to just thank the instructional division. Tomorrow, they're going to be hosting a professional development day. When I came to the district in 2018, these district-wide professional development days were not a practice, or they hadn't been a practice in a really long time. And it was through the partnership with our labor partners and the leadership of Gail Young with MVEA and her team that we were able to build these days into our calendar and provide district-wide professional development for all of our teachers and some of our support staff, our nurses, our counselors, and many of the employees in the NAPS unit as well. I really missed that first one that was so successful in October of 2019 over at American Canyon High School, where just the whole organization came together. But they've just done an extraordinary job of doing the best we can in doing professional development virtually. And tomorrow is just going to be really exciting. And I'm really excited about kicking it off with a virtual keynote tomorrow. I think that it's going to be a great day of learning, and the whole theme around being well, teaching well, leading well is so appropriate given what we have persisted through as a community over the course of the last year. So I want to thank everybody for their ongoing support, as well as I continue to face my health challenge. The outpour from the NVUSD community, it just keeps coming in, even post the announcement and all the trickling in week by week. I just want to let everybody know that it continues to serve as an anchor in my fight. And I feel very, very strong knowing that I have the NVUSD community behind me. And I continue to work towards healing. So thank you so much for your support through this process. With that being said, I'm going to toss to the assistant superintendent so that they can do their reports. And we're going to start off with Ms. Dana Page, the assistant superintendent of human resources.
Thank you. Good evening, President Gonzalez Mares, Board of Trustees, Student Board Representative, and Dr. Massetti. I'd like to start by first echoing Gail Young's statements earlier about this being a difficult time of year in HR. This is the time of year when we do our annual release of our temporary teachers. We give reassignment notices or notices of potential reassignment to some of our administrators, and we have to bring resolutions and potentially notice teachers about layoffs. I do want to give one update though, that while our PKS resolution from last board meeting does call for the elimination of 39 teaching positions, through the efforts of offering an early tell incentive to find out who is retiring from our teacher workforce or who is resigning, and also the efforts of our enrollment department who have been working diligently to follow up on incomplete enrollments, we've been able to reduce the number of teachers who will ultimately receive those notices down to 22 at this point, and we anticipate that we'll continue to be able to lower that number of teachers that actually ultimately may potentially be laid off. So I'd also like to report that we did send out a survey to all employees to check on the status of the employee vaccinations. As Dr. Massetti shared, we have a majority of our employees vaccinated. Of our 1,222 people who responded to the survey, 86% have received the first or the second dose of vaccine. 55% of our employees who have gotten a vaccine got it at one of the clinics that NVUSD helped to provide at Napa Valley College main campus with the help of Safeway. And we will continue to provide opportunities as they become available. And it's been a month since our last board meeting, so we have 2 staff spotlights to share. On February 23rd, we featured Monica Trejo, Food Service Cafe Manager 4 at Redwood Middle School. Monica Trejo exemplifies how hard work and a positive attitude can pay off as she worked her way all the way up from substitute cafeteria associate to become a leader in food services. Monica is constantly challenging herself to learn more, and if time and money were not an object, she would love to study to become a master baker. Our 5th staff spotlight was on Ray Morales, who was nominated by a parent, grateful for the amazing work Ray has done during the pandemic. Ray is unique as one of the very few male kindergarten teachers we have in NVUSD. Ray started out at Pueblo Vista almost 30 years ago and now has been at Browns Valley for 7. Ray says his secret when the going gets tough is to eat a piece of chocolate before diving into problem solving. So I'm thinking there may be an opportunity for Monica Trejo and Ray Morales to collaborate on some chocolate baked goods in the future. As always, anyone can nominate an extraordinary NVUSD employee. Just send us their name and a brief statement about why you selected them. Send your submissions to hr@nvusd.org or just give us a call. We just want to hear from you. We don't care how. So thank you, and this concludes our report.
Thank you, Ms. Page. Mr. Mangwala, Assistant Superintendent of Business Services.
Thank you, Dr. Massetti. Good evening. I will forego my update tonight as I will be providing a very comprehensive update about our budget when I present second interim later. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mangwala. Assistant Superintendent Pat Andrew Jennings of Instructional Support Services.
Good evening, President Gonzalez Mares, Board Trustees, Dr. Massetti, and Student Representative Magana. We just completed the second week of phase 3 with students on campus 4 days a week. In my school site visits this week, I continue to be impressed by our school staff's effort in providing top-notch education. And I also loved seeing students safely engaged in in-person learning in classrooms. Tomorrow is our Spring Professional Learning Day, which is themed Be Well, Teach Well, Lead Well. The day will kick off, as Dr. Massetti said, with her keynote from her, and then our instructional staff will have the opportunity to attend 3 one-hour sessions on various topics. In the afternoon, sites will spend time reflecting and applying the learning from the morning. The instructional division has worked hard over the last few months to provide almost 150 sessions on various topics ranging from evidence-based programs for students dealing with trauma, to promoting student engagement. I want to acknowledge my team for planning and organizing this exceptional professional learning experience. Everyone contributed to preparing for this day, from confirming outside presenters, consulting and coaching our own NVUSD presenters, hosting sessions, and even packaging up the swag that was generously donated by the Napa Valley Education Foundation. I particularly want to thank Director Sarah Knox and Director Peter Aboud, who have spent countless hours working through the technical aspects of hosting a high-quality virtual conference. I'm excited for tomorrow and hope you will be able to join us. On a personal note, a year ago tomorrow, I was grateful to accept the appointment as the Assistant Superintendent of Instruction. On that Thursday night, I had no idea what this year would bring. It has been a challenging year, but I am incredibly proud of the work that our division has accomplished, even during this pandemic. And I look forward to continuing to provide exceptional educational experiences for our students. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Andrew Jennings. Next, and our last executive report is from Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Mike Pearson of Operational Services.
Good evening, President Gonzalez Maras, NVUSD trustees, student trustee Magana, and Dr. Massetti. Thank you for the opportunity to update all of you. Today's presentation or my update is going to center on a high school athletics and update, and Mr. Reese is going to bring that presentation up in just a second. As we're doing that, I just want to give the Board of Education a quick update in a couple different areas. Number one, in maintenance and operation, we have been partnering with 2 different entities in the Valley to have vaccination centers on our school sites. And so we'll be in the very near future at Snow Elementary School, there'll be a vaccination center there with a partnership with the Queen of the Valley Hospital, excuse me. And then and then hopefully near the end of this month, we'll be partnering with the County of Napa and the City of American Canyon to have a vaccination center down at American Canyon High School. And then in food service, some exciting news came out from the USDA that they have extended free meals through September 30th of 2021. So that's great news for our students and our families. And then we're gearing up for a 2-week distribution on March 22nd to distribute 2 weeks worth of meals to our families who pick up meals on the curbside. So just a quick update on that. All right, so here we are with high school athletics to provide you an update of where we're at this time. So Mr. Rees, if you could go to the next slide, please. So just as a quick review to everyone, high school athletics has been able to condition in cohorts or pods for the purpose of conditioning and individual skill development. They've also were able to use equipment that was introduced recently. And then finally, some high school sports have been able to hold official practices along with competition against other schools. And you might be asking why sports can compete. So if you go to the next slide, Mr. Reese. So in January of 2021, as you may recall, a committee had been formed with members from both the California Department of Public Health and the CIF. And what resulted from this committee was new guidance on youth and high school sports. And what did this new guidance allow for? Next slide, Mr. Reese. So it allowed for sports to be played in the aforementioned or the tiers that you can see here. So the purple tier, the red tier, the orange tier, and the yellow tier. And it was dependent upon what tier each county was placed in. In this table, I've identified the high school sports that occur in NVUSD by the color-coded tier outlined in the guidance from the California Department of Public Health. As you can tell, when Napa County was in the purple, high school could compete in the following sports: cross country, golf, tennis, swim and dive, and track and field. In Napa County, all the aforementioned sports officially began practicing and competing on February 8th, with the exception of track and field, which I'll explain later. So what does this competition in these sports look like? Let's take a look. So next slide, please, Mr. Reese. So here's our tennis players at Vintage and Napa High School recently competing in an event, in a match, and you can see they're actively engaged in a tennis match. And the next slide, Mr. Reese, highlighting our cross country athletes from, and these are Vintage High School, Napa High School, and American Canyon High School. Some of the meets are actually happening on high school campuses. Other meets are happening at Kennedy Park. I did not have pictures of golf and swim and dive, but they are also competing. And you might be interested to know that swimming and diving meets are done virtually. I am pretty sure this is the first that's ever happened. Next slide, please. So in this slide are two tables, the top table being the California Department of Public Health guidance that I recently shared with you, and the bottom table outlining the season for each sport in our league and our section. And again, our high schools compete in the North Coast section, and that league is the Vine Valley Athletic League for this. And so the California Department of Public Health did not outline a season for each sport like the NCS and the Vine Valley Athletic League did. And as I mentioned earlier about track and field, so track and field is considered in the purple tier, and you would think that it would have been happening right now, but the Vine Valley Athletic League and the North Coast Section League has that as a season 2 sport. So that's if you wanted to show you a little bit difference on that. And the season 2 sports will begin on April 2nd. I bring these two tables to your attention because football falls in season 1. And why do I mention football? If you'll go to the next slide, please, Mr. Reese. You will note that, well, actually go back one slide. Sorry, Mr. Reese, my bad. You'll note that in season 1, football is one of the sports that's happening in the North Coast section and the Vine Valley Athletic League. Football could not happen in the purple tier or the red tier. It could only occur in the orange tier, according to the guidance from the California Department of Public Health. So next slide now, Mr. Reese. So on February 19th, there was additional guidance that had been provided by the California Department of Public Health, and it allowed play in less restricted tiers. So it allowed play in the red tier for outdoor moderate contact sports, and in the yellow tier, excuse me, the orange tier for outdoor high contact sports. The main impact that Napa Valley Unified is experienced was football, since football is a season 1 sport, which I showed on the last slide. So what are the expectations to be followed? If you go to the next slide, Mr. Reese. So with outdoor moderate contact sports, if they were to be played at this point, which they are not being played at this point because we're still in season 1, athletes would have to have an informed consent form, face coverings, physical distancing, hygiene and sanitation. And they would only be able to play sports against counties that are adjacent. In the outdoor high contact, there is again the informed consent form, but then there's the testing of coaches and athletes, and the results need to be made 24 hours in advance of a competition. And this is in counties that have an adjusted case rate between 7 and 14 per 100,000. And then they also have the face covering, the physical distancing, and things like that are happening on that. So a little bit more about football. For football to happen in the less restricted tier, as I said, the informed consent has to happen and the testing of the athletes have to happen. But the California Department also stated in the updated guidance for the COVID-19 was that the testing for COVID-19 was not a requirement if the adjusted case rate in a county was below 7. I hope you guys are with me at this point. So in Napa County, we are now, as you know, we are in the red tier, and our adjusted case rate is below 7, specifically at 6.4. However, when schools in Napa County play against each other, the testing requirement is not applied at this point. However, if we play against a team from Sonoma County, which we do, since the 3 teams are from Sonoma County in the Vine Valley Athletic League, so we have to test our athletes because Sonoma County's adjusted rate is 7 or above. And the guidance from the California Department of Public Health is that the more stringent guidance is applied, meaning both teams have to test prior to a game. And currently Sonoma County has an adjusted case rate of 8.2. Therefore, for example, Vintage and American Canyon High School players and coaches are competing in Sonoma County this Friday night, and they have both schools and with players and coaches have participated in testing this week for that purpose alone. Next slide, Mr. Reese. So just quickly to update you on as a reminder that there are 7 high schools in the Vine Valley Athletic League. 3 schools are in Sonoma County, and they are Petaluma High School, Casa Grande High School, and Sonoma Valley High School. And there are 4 schools in Napa County that compete in the Vine Valley Athletic League: American Canyon High School, Justin Stanton High School, Napa, and Vintage High Schools. For the purposes of athletics, there are going to be league games only played this year. There will be no playoffs. The North Coast section and the CIF have forego playoffs this year, which they were going to have to because the seasons could not end in a timely manner. And then once Sonoma County falls below 7 and Napa County stays below 7, the COVID-19 testing requirement for football will not have to happen, and it won't have to happen for any subsequent sports unless the guidance just does change. Next slide, Mr. Reese. On a positive note, we recently received guidance from the Napa County Public Health for spectators who can be at athletic events. So for all athletic events, there were already going to be essential personnel that had to be there. So for example, staff, officials, we're going to allow the press there that need to be at these events. But as I stated, the public health is now permitting spectators to be at the athletic events too, based on guidance that was just recently released, which was last Friday. So at stadium and outdoor events, which includes pools and things like that, we'll have essential staff there, as I mentioned, essential personnel. And then the guidance allows up to 2 adults from the immediate household of each athlete for the purpose of supervising the athlete. And in addition, the public health is also allowing cheerleaders to be at these events. And they too can have up to 2 adults from their immediate household for the purpose of supervising the cheerleader for that. At outdoor events that don't have enclosed areas, the same metrics apply for the essential staff and for the adults to supervise an athlete as well too. And all high schools will be receiving a spectator. All high schools today received a spectator guidance. This was for the principals and the athletic directors. And then information will be mailed out to families tomorrow regarding the spectators as well too. Next slide, please. So because we're going to be having spectators there, we'll definitely have to have making sure we have robust safety protocols at stadiums, pools, and other outdoor venues. As obviously the greater density of spectators will increase our safety protocols. Mask and face coverings enforcement will happen. We'll have hand sanitizer stations there at all the venues. Check-in places so that when people come to observe and spectate on their son or daughter who's participating, they'll be able to identify who they are and make sure that there's only 2 of these adults from immediate households there. We'll have plenty of signage up that make sure that people are staying 6 feet distance and how to use restrooms. In stadiums, we have processes in place where we'll have signage on the rows. We're going to be skipping every 2 rows in the stadiums to make sure that we have sufficient distance. Concessions will not be open, and we'll have increased cleaning in the restrooms. And then any of the areas used by the athletes will also increase that cleaning area as well too. But the locker rooms will not be used. Next slide, please, Mr. Reese. And then the other considerations to take into for this is that transportation, that we're still working on how athletes will get to and from the athletic events in the event. Currently, we're continuing to have really good success, but we have to continue to work on that with each one of the school sites because we want to make sure all of our students have access to getting to and from events. The impact on facilities, season 2 is going to be challenging from an outdoor standpoint, and particularly on our synthetic fields, because we'll have boys and girls lacrosse competing, we'll have soccer, boys and girls soccer competing, and then we have track and field competing. So there really isn't enough synthetic field space out there, which is what the space that the athletes and the coaches would like to be on. We certainly have lots of grass fields, but we also are anticipating that we'll need to spread out to some of our middle schools as well too, to accommodate all the needs that will happen during season 2. With live streaming, each high school will provide live streaming of select home athletic games during this upcoming season, but there are going to be some limitations just with Wi-Fi access, accessibility based on where the event may be happening. The links for live stream will be distributed by individual school sites and will be available free of charge to anybody who wants to watch a particular athletic event that's going to be live streamed. With the counties between 7 and 14, so as I shared earlier, the Napa County is below 7 and Sonoma County is above, and so athletes will need to be tested at least 1 time per week for football and potentially water polo, depending upon when and if Sonoma County is still above that 7 threshold. And then finally, there's season 2 indoor sports with such as basketball, volleyball, and badminton and wrestling. There are still many questions that we're waiting for more information to get answered on what the next steps will be on that regarding indoor sports. And then I think some of you are aware of a recent court case that was down out of San Diego regarding high school athletics. We're still not sure how this will impact the current California public health guidance. We're waiting for more information locally to help us understand exactly what our next steps are. And this would mainly center back onto the season 2 of the indoor sports. Next slide. All right, so that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take a few questions if you have any about high school athletics.
Mr. Pearson, I couldn't help but notice that you left competitive cheer off the initial slides in January. It would have fallen in the red. I'm hoping that was not an intentional slight to our cheerleaders.
Trustee Grassi, it is not a slight to our cheerleaders at all. Our cheerleaders are not currently doing the competitive cheer that is outlined in the CIF. So that was the reason why I did not put it down as a competitive sport at this point. That none of the high schools participate or use their cheer as a competitive cheer as outlined by CIF. So that was the reason why it was not listed.
So I know there's probably some band parents out there asking, so if cheer and dance are able to perform at football games, what about band?
Excellent question. And we have posed that question to our local public health directors and advocating on behalf of our band students at all 3 high schools. To date, it is not something that is being permitted at any of the athletic events.
Mr. Pearson, can you explain why boys and girls lacrosse were in different tiers? I noticed that I think it was girls could come back at red, but boys not till orange.
Yeah, thank you, Trustee Reiser. It has to do with the contact that happens in the 2 sports. So in girls lacrosse, there's much less contact happening as compared to in boys lacrosse between the athletes that are competing.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Pearson? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pearson.
All right, thank you all.
Okay. Dr. Mercetti, does that conclude?
It does. That concludes staff reports for now.
Great, thank you. Okay, we are now on to item I of our agenda. This is the approval of consent agenda. Background information on these items is provided to the board prior to the meeting. A common motion takes action without discussion and roll call vote unless discussion of items is requested by the board members.
I'll move to approve.
I have a first by Trustee Gracia and a second by Trustee Jankowicz. Do I have any public comment on consent agenda items, Mr. Ruiz?
There are no public comments at this time, President Gonzalez-Mares.
Thank you. Student board rep, we'll do roll call. Vera, please.
Yes, Student Board Member Magaña,
Aye.
Trustee Gonzalez-Mares,
Aye.
Trustee Jankowicz,
Aye.
Trustee Gracia,
Aye.
Trustee Reiser,
Aye.
Trustee Water,
Aye.
Trustee Shu,
Aye.
Trustee Dooley.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vera. We will now go to item J of our presentations and discussion items. So item J1, business services, and J1A, presentation on 2021 second interim report.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rees, can you please start the slideshow? Again, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak about second interim. Next slide, please. So I wanted to start my presentation just as a reminder of where we're at. This is a slide from my second interim presentation last year. And basically what it said was, even though our economy is really strong, there's a lot of uncertainty due to COVID-19. And the majority of these things did actually end up coming true. So we did have a negative impact on global trade and supply chain. We had slower gross domestic product and possibly even a global contraction, which did occur. We had extreme stock market volatility. There were large market interventions by the Federal Reserve. And this one actually expanded quite a bit. At the time, there were very small scale school closures, but as we know, schools across the nation did close. Fortunately, there was not a negative impact to average daily attendance. And so we were held harmless at those levels. And we did end up getting a much more conservative budget from the governor. Next slide, please. And so this did cause a great deal of economic uncertainty over the last year. One of the things that impacted many of the people, including our families in Napa, is the unemployment rate. So the unemployment rate did go up a great deal. We lost over 2.5 million jobs, and we are well on our way for recovery. Next slide, please. And so there are some signals in the bond market right now that should cause us to be a little cautionary. So the 10-year bond yield has increased from 0.53% to 1.47%. This is essentially a tripling of the bond yield. This indicates that there are inflationary expectations in the market. This means that the cost of goods and services will go up. Likely what we'll also see is we'll see a decrease in the rate of return that we're seeing in some of our large assets, such as the stock market and home prices. What does this mean for school funding? This essentially means that in the out years, we should expect a reduction in school funding due to the fact that the vast majority of the revenues that we receive in California come from our higher wage earners and from the sale of assets. Next slide, please. And so again, inflation is a real risk. Higher bond yields historically result in decreased demand for stocks and lowering earnings due to higher borrowing costs. Our tax system is very dependent on capital gains. And so again, the impact on the out years is there's a little bit of uncertainty there. But then again, I would anticipate that we will receive less revenues due to the sale of assets. Next slide, please. And so in terms of our budget for the next 2 years, for 21-22 and 22-23, we have received, or we will receive, an increase in funding per student of 3.84% for 21-22 and 2.84% for 22-23. Some of the other additional funds that we will receive are some restricted funds for in-person instruction, along with extra funds to mitigate learning loss through interventions and additional learning times. Next slide. In terms of examining our reserves, you can see that we're about at the same spot that we were when we closed the books at the end of last year. We are above our board reserve policy at 7.5%. A lot of that is due to the fact that we've received COVID money, and our expenditures with COVID money has helped us not spend some of our general fund money, especially on materials and contracts and items as such. And so again, this is one-time money in our reserves. Yes, our reserves are above 7.5%, but there is a great deal of uncertainty coming forward. Next slide, please. In terms of enrollment in the district does continue to decline. You can see that our enrollment has declined consistently since 2014-15. The little blip that you see of 2 years of an increased enrollment was actually due to a conversion of 2 charter schools into district schools. Even with these numbers, we anticipate by 26-27 that our total enrollment will drop to 14,562. Next slide, please. So there are many financial implications as a result. Declining enrollment will have a negative impact on revenues for the foreseeable future. Again, we do anticipate additional enrollment decline due to COVID-19. We're watching these numbers very closely as we compare our enrollment projections to our numbers that we see in our student information system. This is especially apparent in our grade levels such as TK, K, 6th grade and 9th grade, where I feel that parents are waiting to see what school will look like next year before they make that decision to complete their enrollment paperwork. Both certificated and classified cuts will need to occur every year as long as we have declining enrollment. We'll also need to close a middle school beginning in year 22-23. This is built in the budget. We will also need to continue to look at elementary schools and may very well need to close elementary schools as we respond to continued declining enrollment. Our reserves, while they are above the board policy of 7.5%, they are well below the average of other unified school districts in California, which is sitting at about 16%. Next slide, please. In terms of some of the budgets that in terms of some of the assumptions that are built into the budget, or I should say the second interim update to the budget, there is an assumed closure of a middle school. The savings is about $1 million in the first year. There will be additional savings in the out years. You get about half of it in the first year. That's to the immediate savings that you get from reduction in staff. The other $1 million you get over time as your utility bill goes away once you sell the facility, along with the remainder of the maintenance of the facility. In terms of food services, we are excited that the summer food feeding program will go through September of next year. That's new news, as Assistant Superintendent Mike Pearson shared with us tonight. We'll be watching for that, hopefully a continuation of it through the entire year next year. Our average daily attendance will be fixed, which is the funding mechanism for the school district this year and next year. However, in year 3, we will feel the full brunt of the decline in enrollment. So again, we do need to watch enrollment closely. There is a cost of living adjustment of 3.84% in 21-22 and 2.98% in 22-23. We've also put aside money for funding for our compensation formula and step and column, which is equal to 2%. Next slide, please. There are reductions in both certificated, classified, and management positions in response to continued and accelerating declining enrollment. Our liability insurance costs are anticipated to go up by 20%. And we anticipate that we'll continue to have to make contributions to the general fund to special education. As a matter of fact, they will actually go up as we continue to give salary increases, as labor costs are the vast majority of the contribution to special education. In terms of the actual multi-year projection, go ahead, next slide, please, Mr. Ruiz. You can see that our reserves for this year and next year are about the same, 9.1%, 8.98, a small decrease. Again, this is a projection. We anticipate that when we come to actually adopt the budget, that we will not be adopting a budget with a decrease in fund balance, and we will not be deficit spending as we kind of tighten up our forecast. However, in year 3, we do see that we do have a substantial drop in our revenues and an increase in our expenses, which would have a decrease in the fund balance. So we do need to watch that third year very closely. While there is uncertainty around that, again, we need to be aware of it and plan for it. And built into this number, again, is the assumption that we will close a middle school and save $1 million. If we do not close a middle school, we'll need to find $1 million cut elsewhere. Next slide, please. In terms of current year challenges, we will be receiving some one-time money that we can use to mitigate learning loss. One of the challenges of receiving money like that is that you want to make sure that you put policy in place that's sustainable. We don't want to be in a situation where we have this one-time money and we staff up and then have to lay off large numbers of employees like we had to do when we unpacked some of the money from LCFF. We will continue to need a TRAN as long as our reserves are at the same level, around 9%, as the vast majority of the money that we receive comes from property taxes. Interest rates have gone up, so we anticipate that the borrowing costs for our TRAN that we take out for the next fiscal year, we take that out at the end of June. It's officially as of July 1. We use that money for the next fiscal year, and then we take one out the following year. Staffing projections are particularly challenging due to multiple data points, including varying levels of declining enrollment. Next slide. I'm sorry, final slide. This concludes my presentation, and at this point, I'd like to open up to questions from trustees.
So I do have some things to say about this report. I look at this report and I am not satisfied with what has been presented tonight at second interim. At first interim, we had a projected surplus of a scant $200,000. Despite the news from Sacramento getting better and additional funding being made available, our second interim report indicates deficit spending in the amount of $700,000. This is a swing in the wrong direction of nearly $1 million. At first interim, I specifically cautioned that there was not sufficient savings in year 2 and encouraged you to find a way to pare down expenses in the district sufficiently to achieve a savings of $2 million in order to make the deficit in year 3 more manageable. The size of the district must continue to shrink in order to match the declining enrollment. and corresponding declining revenues. This unfortunately means we must continue to right-size the district by paring down both the number of schools and employees. Instead of paring down expenses, tonight's report increases them. This is a problem considering that the revenue projections have actually increased since first interim. I do not support the current plan for deficit spending in year 2, as we are very close to having to adopt year 2 as our budget for the 2021-2022 school year. The lack of cost cutting in year 2 means that the year 3 deficit remains out of control and returns us to an unacceptable 3.3% reserve level. I will not be satisfied with a budget that looks like second interim at budget adoption. Deficit spending at budget adoption is a non-starter. I have confidence that once we have more clarity around the final budget from Sacramento, that the team under Mr. Manguala's direction will make the appropriate adjustments. I expect staff to work hard making sure that deficit spending is not present when in a few short months we get to budget adoption. I will vote tonight to approve second interim despite all the aforementioned problems it has, based solely on my confidence in staff's ability to make future adjustments to eliminate deficit spending and increase savings.
Thank you very much for that feedback. We will definitely deliver.
Well, last week, the stock market did get a little queasy and the bond market got a little anxious. And we're seeing a large fiscal response from the Fed, and the markets are trying to process it all. With predictions of growth come the possibility of inflation, which Mr. Manguala stated could prompt a rise in interest rates. Because yields on bonds broadly reflect investor views on the economy, the business office has to keep abreast of all that market movement. So this data starts setting the stage. When the first or second interim is presented, the board is always mindful and aware of the assumptions that Mr. Manguala identifies that influence budgetary decisions. The issue of declining enrollment, coupled with the fiscal impact of the pandemic, cash reserve percentages, governor's budget, paying down of deferrals, COLA adjustments, et cetera. The business office then has to assess the fiscal effort, which is often difficult to operationalize, fiscal capacity, and then use this data to determine our budget. These are big picture considerations that funnel down to the second interim presented to us this evening, many of which are out of our immediate control, which means we have the responsibility to make the right, often difficult decisions for that which we do have control over. The adoption of the interim budget means we understand and approve the forecasting and assumptions presented. In that decision-making process, we have a responsibility to highlight any fiscal concerns we might have. I share Trustee Gracia's concerns that Y2 numbers show us operating in a deficit after making substantial cuts in restricted and unrestricted general fund spending. Mr. Manguala presented that in year 22-23, based on the assumptions presented, our cash reserves could hover around 3.3%. And in my mind, this is unacceptable risk. I understand that year 3 numbers are speculative and that many projections change before that time, but that doesn't negate the need to look critically at additional school closures. We cannot succumb to using cash reserves to rectify deficit spending. We must be proactive. In a nutshell, we face increasing demand for limited fiscal resources. We face rising costs, step and column, insurance, et cetera, and underfunded accounts to pay for them. And that, excuse me, and painstaking decisions about how to best spend inadequate education dollars for maximum return for our NVUSD students. It's like a complex math problem, but we are responsible for trying to secure a solution. Demographic changes are significantly impacting school finance, but with planning, I believe we can address these challenges effectively. At the end of the day, education is our community's investment in our own best interest, and our budgeting process has to reflect that commitment. I will vote to approve second interim, but with the caveat that we research the potential need for closing additional schools.
Any other comments or questions?
I just had a question, Mr. Manguala, about your, just to ask you to speak a little bit more to the comment about how our reserve, well, we are currently above the board policy reserve, that we are basically, our reserve is half of what the average unified school district has as reserve. So I'm wondering if it would behoove us, especially looking at that 3.3% in the year three, if, you know, if we should consider raising our board policy reserve percentage to protect us from future financial crises.
So yes, let me answer that. So the 16% comes from School Services of California, which is a leader in the school business community. They do an analysis where they look at unified school districts and typical reserves. And so 16% is the average for a unified school district. You know, some are even higher than that. Some are a lot less. And so it is certainly worth looking at board policy around that. I mean, the one caveat that I would toss out there is you know, if we were to ever adjust that number, let's say we were to adjust that number up, I would look to do that in steps and do it in a manner to where we actually hit that target. I think that when we were below our board policy, or not, I think that I know that when we were below our board policy, when I met with creditors, when they were analyzing our credit, and whenever we take out a tran or we went to sell bonds, they always brought up the fact that we were far below our board policy. So I feel that whatever our board policy is around that number, we need to make sure and hit it. And yes, that does impact our credit. Higher reserves equals higher credit score.
And I think it may have been in a previous presentation by you, Mr. Manguala, but isn't it true that in a declining enrollment environment, that it's those conditions that really you're safer to have a higher reserve. So just that factor that we know we're facing declining enrollment in the out years. I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yes, absolutely. So what a reserve does, remember, a reserve is one-time money, and so the goal obviously is to not deficit spend as you go from year one, year two, year three, and actually build up a reserve. That's the most important thing, not to have a structural deficit. But yes, what reserves do is reserves buy you time to address things that are going on, such as declining enrollment and so forth.
And Mr. Manguala, can you just remind everybody, when we say reserves, it's in percentages. Can you put that in perspective in terms of how that?
Sure. So if you look at reserves are calculated or required based on total expenditures. So the total expenditures for the district with all the one-time money we have is about $210 million. And so when we say our reserves are 9%, it's 9% of that $210 million. It's not very much. I think right now where we're sitting at, we're still probably sitting at less than a month's salary. So it's really, in perspective, it's really not a big dollar amount. It just literally gives you time to make the adjustments that you need. When we were sitting around 3%, little things like, having to, if you get your enrollment projected wrong and you suddenly have to add 5 teachers, that makes a big difference. That can bring you below that number. Or if you have to contribute extra money to food services, and you just don't have that ability to adjust for that, or you need to add, suddenly add additional services for students. You don't have the ability to do that when your reserves are low. When your reserves are higher, you have the ability to dip into them for those things that you need.
Trustee Water?
Thank you for this. School finance is not my natural métier, but I have learned a lot in the last 2.5 years. And I mean, I'm thinking of some of the comments that I've gotten in letters, or I've heard people say at our meetings. Well, we need to think outside the box, and we need to get donations. I'm sure people in the private sector would be willing to, help us out. And they are, and that's true. There is help in the private sector, in kind of a limited way, but we cannot run a public school system dependent on private charity. We absolutely can't. It is not fair to our students. It's not fair to the community. That's all I have to say. We have to be able to support our programs. charity, I look at that as for enrichment. And I love it.
I agree with trustees Gracia and Jankowicz. I think that when we look at the year 3 numbers and staggering deficits, we recognize that that's projections and based on a lot of assumptions that will change in the next 2 years. But what we need to do in managing this year and next year is put ourselves in a position that if the eventualities in the next 2 years, reveal numbers that are even close to that, we need to be in a position to have already responded to those realities. So that means we need to respond now to those. And I support the I fully support the business division's efforts to make sure that that doesn't happen. And I am, as Trustee Gracia said, confident that they will be doing that hard work to present us with the hard decisions. We need to continue to provide the direction to right-size the district to address the realities of the problems that we are facing now and we will be facing in the future. So I support certification of this in this report as well, but I echo the other trustees in the concerns.
Yeah, it's for me, when I look at this multi-year projection, it definitely makes it more real, the impact of our finances to our programs and our students. And I think many times we're being asked to separate the two, to separate that, and it wouldn't be responsible of us to do so. It's one of our main responsibilities and duties as board members to make sure that our budget, just like we would in our own personal homes, that we are not extending ourselves more than we can afford, and to put the students in the middle of that creates an impact. When I see what we have done in the past, it makes me think again, as we're reminded that a year ago we were in this room closing our schools because of COVID-19 and without knowing what was going to happen. Prior to that, if we rewind time, we made some really important decisions as well about right sizing and looking at our data to make the right choices in order to build up our reserves, in order to build up our finances, so that when we got to a point where there was a worldwide pandemic, something unprecedented, that we were able to have the funds to be able to meet the needs of our students and react to that in a positive way. So that proactiveness of thinking got us to be able to be in this boardroom and vote to approve more Chromebooks, more technology that needed to happen as we entered this virtual world. And that also puts us in a spotlight that without those decisions, we'd be in a very different conversation. Just pick up any newspaper of any Bay Area city and county around us, and you're going to find a totally different story. And we find ourselves with schools that are open for in-person and hybrid models. And as mentioned before, we're one of 100 or so school districts that are open out of 1,100 school districts in the state. And then we're unique just by our size as well, from K to 12. So it's remarkable to be able to reflect on that and kind of think that how all those decisions prepared us as much as possible to be there for our students in this time of tremendous need. And if we don't continue to make decisions like this, that we will find ourselves in a very, very different situation, and hovering above that 3% is not where we want to be, is not where we want to be as a district. So we have to be very, very careful about that. All right, any other comments?
President Gonzalez Mares, I would just like to thank Mr. Mangwala, Ms. Kay Van, our Executive Director of Fiscal Services, and the entire business team preparing for these budget milestones. First interim, second interim there's just a tremendous amount of labor and hard work, and they've had to do it with a lot of moving targets and a lot of unknowns because of the financial roller coaster that's out there. So I just want to commend them for their work in preparing a very clear budget forecast for the school board. And we look forward now to moving towards budget development. So thank you, Mr. Mangwala, and thanks to your team.
Thank you.
Before we move on, I will ask Mr. Ruiz if we have any public comment on this item.
President Gonzalez Mares, we have no public comment for this item.
Thank you. We're moving ahead to item J2, instructional services, J2A, NVUSD, K-12 dual language immersion program presentation. So,
Well, good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to share information with everyone this evening about Napa Valley Unified School District's dual language immersion program, also known as DLI. Tonight, I have Principals Alejandra Uribe of Napa Valley Language Academy, Helen Roca of Pueblo Vista, Martha Franco of Harvest Middle School, and Monica Reddy of Napa High. And they are eager to share information about our program. Next slide, please. Now, Martha Franco, the principal of Harvest, will start us off.
Good evening, Dr. Mercetti and Board of Trustees. I am Martha Franco, principal of Harvest Middle School, and I am happy to be here with you tonight to have this opportunity to share a bit of information with you regarding the DLI program. Next, we will share with you the history and evolution of dual immersion in NVUSD, tell you a little bit about what it looks like at the elementary, middle, and high school level, and give you some data. You will hear about how the dual immersion is literally the ability to immerse a student in two languages so they become truly proficient in both, an advantage that will open doors to them in the future. Alejandra Uribe, principal of Napa Valley Language Academy, will begin the presentation with the history and evolution of the dual immersion program. Next slide, please.
Good evening. My name is Alejandra Uribe, and I'm the proud principal at Napa Valley Language Academy. And the history of dual language at NVUSD begins in 1994 with Philip Moreno, who at the time was a principal at Westwood Elementary, which is now Napa Valley Language Academy. And he was on the quest to change a script for something that he was very passionate about. Mr. Moreno, he was born of Mexican immigrant parents and had grown up being told that speaking Spanish was something that was not going to get him anywhere. It was not something that was looked like as an asset. And so he grew up not speaking Spanish and then feeling disconnected from his roots and neglecting a big part of his identity. And years later, as he became a teacher and then the principal at Westwood, he vowed to change the script regarding languages and cultures for future generations. And together with Deb Wallace and a passionate team of educators who were at Westwood at the time, they engaged in extensive research on programs that would preserve, honor, and celebrate bilingual, biliterate, and bicultural students. And at the same time, they had an interest to transform the Westwood neighborhood because at the time, this particular side of town was known for gangs and violence. And after extensive research, they identified as the 90-10 two-way dual immersion program as one that would celebrate languages, cultures, and over time, transform and integrate the community. So a petition was made to the school board to start a strand of dual immersion program. And on May 5th, 1994, the school board approved this petition. And so then the following school year, the first dual immersion strand began with kinder and first grade, while the rest of the school remained as a traditional school by offering some bilingual supports for the students. A few years later, in 1998, Prop 227, the English Only Initiative, passed, and this initiative threatened every bilingual program in the state of California, including the one in Westwood. And it was at the time that the team sought charter status in order to protect and maintain the dual immersion program that had just started a few years prior. The NVUSD school board at the time approved charter status on October 9th, 1998. And then the following school year, Westwood changed its name to Napa Valley Language Academy as it gained its charter status and was set to grow the program by not just being a strand of dual immersion, but actually becoming a school-wide dual immersion program. And as students moved through the school years, there was an interest from the dual immersion families to continue the dual immersion track beyond NVLA. So for 2 school years, from 2001 to 2003, our dual immersion students continued the dual immersion pipeline or pathway onto Silverado Middle School as they continued on the program. At the time, Harvest had not opened its doors. So again, students were being bused over to Silverado. Then in the fall of 2003, when Harvest Middle School opened up their doors, the dual language program was moved over to Harvest, and it has been there since. And just a quick note about that, in talking to Mike Mansoy, who was a principal at Silverado at the time and receiving the dual immersion students, he was sharing that a lot of different students were being bused into Silverado, and one of the groups was coming from the Westwood area for the DLI program. So it made sense that once the Harvest School opened, that the students that were being bused from this side of town, from the Westwood area, would then remain in their neighborhood school and continue on the dual immersion program. So then in 2013, Napa High opened up a dual immersion strand and provided families with the opportunity to continue on the dual immersion pathway through 12th grade. And over the years, the pathway has grown and strengthened, and it has become a very popular program for closing the achievement gap and producing bilingual and biliterate students, and integrating and celebrating the diversity of our community. And every year, NVLA was enrolling 100 kinder students while maintaining a long wait list. It was then in 2013 that Principal Helen Roca opened up a second dual immersion program in the school district in order for more families to participate in the dual immersion program. And both schools have produced successful results that demonstrate the positive impact of having students engage in a system that has rigorous academics in both languages and at the same time celebrate cultural diversity. As the work continues in NVUSD to support and strengthen our successful programs, in 2019, so a couple years ago, a team of dual language administrators and district staff successfully developed a mission statement that continues to tether the work that is grounded in excellence. And so I'd just like to take a couple minutes to just share what that vision is. So if you can advance the PowerPoint. So as you can see, it highlights 3 big components here: the rigorous academics, high linguistic and academic proficiency, and sociocultural competence. So again, the academic piece, but then also being aware that this program also integrates the community. So I'll read you the vision. The NVUSD Dual Language Immersion K-12 Pathway is a rigorous academic program developing high linguistic and academic proficiency in both Spanish and English, while simultaneously fostering sociocultural competence. So now I'm going to hand it over to Principal Roca, who will speak a little bit more on the dual immersion program.
Hi, my name is Helen Roca, and I am the proud principal of Puebla Vista Magnet School. I am proud to serve the community and NVUSD school district. Tonight, I'm going to talk about what a dual immersion model is for elementary in NVUSD. Dual immersion is an amazing opportunity for students to become fluent in 2 languages. In Napa, we focus on Spanish and English, with the goal for our students to become bilingual and biliterate. We know that this does not happen overnight. In NVUSD, we are fortunate to have a TK-12 pipeline, where our goal is that students will become bilingual and biliterate and receive the seal of biliteracy by the time they leave our NVUSD. We know that parents who enter the journey of dual immersion understand that there's a commitment, that it takes 3 to 5 years for students to become proficient in a language, but 9 years for them to become fluent in Spanish and in English, and to be truly bilingual and biliterate. We and NAPA and NVUSD, we have our Pueblo Vista and NVLA, which are 90-10 models. What that means is that we're 90% Spanish and 10% English. So in NVLA as well as in Pueblo Vista, our schools focus on Spanish in the early grades so that we make sure that our students have a strong early literacy and that they are very proficient in knowing how to read and write and speak by the time they get to second grade. After second grade, when we get to third grade is when we start to introduce more of the English. There is another model out there that some of you may have been aware of, and it's called a 50-50 model. That's when the students are 50% in English and 50% in Spanish from the beginning of kindergarten. The reason we have a 90-10 model in NVUSD, both at Pueblo Vista and at NVLA, is that our classrooms are made up of 50% native Spanish speakers and 50% native English speakers. This is very important because in kindergarten, our native Spanish speakers serve as their role models, language role models for our native English speakers. And then by the time that the students get to third, fourth, and fifth grade, when English is more dominant in the program, the English speakers become the language role models for our Spanish speakers. This creates an opportunity for students to celebrate cultures. We know that students in a dual immersion setting have a greater understanding and tolerance and appreciation and respect for languages and cultures as they become bilingual and biliterate. We are proud that at NVLA and at Pueblo Vista for our strong early literacy program. We see that our students in our K-2 program in both of our schools, even though they teach predominantly in Spanish, by the time our students get to third grade and they take the test in English, we see that our students are able to achieve higher proficiency levels than our native or just traditional English schools. We see that our English language learners are actually outperforming English language learners in traditional schools, as well as our English only students. We see that in third, fourth, and fifth grade, as we get to more of the 50-50 model in fifth grade, that because our students have received a strong and rigorous program in kindergarten and first and second grade in the language of Spanish, learning literacy skills, when they have the transference in third, fourth, and fifth grade, we see that they have high academic achievement. It is really important that you understand that dual immersion is not an opportunity to teach a language. In kindergarten, first and second grade, when I say that we teach literacy in Spanish, that's exactly what it is. We are teaching the literacy skills in the language of Spanish, but we do not teach students how to speak in Spanish. That's the beautiful part about the immersion. The students are immersed all day long in languages with amazing teachers that have non-linguistic representations, posters, they're animated, they act out, the kids sing, and they have a lot of real life experiences around them that help them produce language. So that when our students get to third grade, they're able to follow what the research shows, that when our students are proficient in kindergarten, first and second in the foundation language of Spanish, they're able to then take those skills and strategies that we have taught them explicitly and transfer them to the language of English in third, fourth, and fifth grade. And that's why you see that our students at both NVLA and Pueblo Vista have academic scores. I'm really important to say that both Pueblo Vista and NVLA have received awards. Pueblo Vista was, NVLA was recognized as a school of excellence from CABE as a dual immersion school. And last year, Pueblo Vista received the California Distinguished School Award and Magnet School of Excellence. So I have to say, I think that our programs have a great example of how students can achieve academic excellence in both Spanish and in English. And tonight we will also hear from Martha Franco, who will talk about how students perform, or the dual immersion program is in the middle school, where we pass the baton on to her for middle school. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Principal Roca. But when you think about the fact that most students do not even get exposed to a second language until they take 2 years in high school, as you've just heard, students in dual immersion have been growing their skills in both languages for 6 years by the time they reach middle school. At the middle school level, the cognitive demand increases in both Spanish and English. The language model used in elementary continues, but in middle school, the students spend about 30% of their time increasing academic and content vocabulary in Spanish, and about 70% of their time increasing academic and content vocabulary in English. That way they remain fluent and increase their sophistication in both languages. In addition to English language arts, all dual immersion students take a Spanish language arts course. Because of their previous experience, most students arrive prepared to enter phase 3 in terms of their fluency in Spanish, but students who are advanced can be placed in a higher level Spanish class. Just like in English language arts, students in Spanish language arts are increasing their skills in reading, writing, speaking, and listening in the Spanish language. An additional exciting opportunity is to be able to take a social studies course taught entirely in Spanish, so that they are applying what they have learned on a daily basis and using their language skills in a content setting. Harvest has been accepted through the Spanish Consulate and Ministry of Education in Spain for a partnership with the International Spanish Academy, also known as ISA. ISA is a network of schools internationally that believe fluency in Spanish and English is an asset in a world of work that is becoming increasingly global. This partnership provides us with a wide variety of supports and curriculum resources that provide students with authentic learning experiences in Spanish. Every dual immersion 8th grader completes a community project that contributes to their community. This encourages a service mentality as well. This gives our students a real life opportunity to apply their language skills to adults in the community in Spanish or in English. We are proud to share that retention at dual immersion students is not an area of concern during the middle school years. Once a dual immersion student enrolls into Harvest, the students successfully promote 8th grade and receive the prestige of receiving an award of distinction from the Ministry of Education in Spain. By continuing to improve their written and oral fluency in 2 languages, middle school dual immersion students at Harvest are well prepared to enter high school and continue to grow in both languages. At this point of the presentation, Ms. Reddy will now share with you the dual immersion experience at the high school level. Thank you.
Thank you, Principal Franco, and good evening, President Gonzalez-Mares, Board of Trustees, and Dr. Massetti. As a part of the International Spanish Academy, Napa High School continues the dual language immersion model tightly aligned to the middle school program in 9th and 10th grade, allowing for a smooth transition and continuation of language acquisition. It is important to highlight that the results seen at the high school level are a credit to the strong foundation of a K-12 aligned program at MBLA, Pueblo Vista, and Harvest that you heard earlier in this part of the presentation. In 9th and 10th grade, the model remains 30% Spanish and 70% English through 2 courses, Immersion Social Science and Spanish Language Arts. These courses allow students to deepen their academic and content linguistic development in rigorous English and Spanish courses, as well as transition to high school connected to their peers. The classes allow students to continue to develop their cultural competence within the courses and deepen it as they transition into a 15% Spanish and 85% English model in 11th and 12th grade. Students continue into advanced Spanish language courses, advanced placement Spanish language, and advanced placement Spanish literature, accredited by the College Board. In these courses, DLI students outperform the worldwide average with a 95 to 100% pass rate for the past 5 years. The culmination of the DLI program allows for students to receive recognition at the state and international level, which reveals their high linguistic proficiency, rigorous academic achievement, and depth of their sociocultural competence, as desired by the vision for DLI and NVUSD. As the capstone of the K-12 program, DLI students have the opportunity to earn the prestigious California State Seal of Biliteracy, recognizing their aptitude in both English and Spanish. For the class of 2020, 86% of the DLI students graduated earning the Seal of Biliteracy. DLI students can also acquire international collegiate recognition through the DELE B2 Spanish exam and certification. The class of 2020 cannot access this exam, but it has been set up for May of 2021 for our students in the class of 2021. Thirdly, the DLI students can earn the ISA diploma from the Ministry of Education and Vocational Training of Spain upon graduation. With that, I will hand it over to Assistant Superintendent Mrs. Andrew Jennings.
Good evening again. We're going to take a look at the current DLI enrollment data and see how students are enrolled and how and their matriculation between our dual language programs. This slide shows the number of students in each grade level. The gray box at the bottom shows the total number of students in the DLI programs from kindergarten to 12th grade. One thing to note is that the high school numbers do not reflect any students from Pueblo Vista. Those few students who were part of the very initial DLI program at Pueblo Vista would have entered high school in the 2020-2021 school year. Next slide, please. This slide details where students have attended after leaving our elementary DLI schools for the last 3 years. The 2017-2018 school year was the first year that students from Pueblo Vista who have participated in the dual language program matriculated to middle school. Since NVLA offers 6th grade, a few students elect to leave after 5th grade to attend a comprehensive middle school. And you can see the data at the right next to the NVLA sign. What is noticeable on this slide is the number of students from Pueblo Vista who have elected to attend either River or Redwood in lieu of attending Harvest. Some factors that might impact the decision of families from Pueblo Vista to attend Harvest might be the location of the school, the perceived strength of the 6th grade DLI program, given the small number of students, or the various other unknown factors that go into a parent's decision on which middle school to attend. Next slide, please. This slide shows where students involved in DLI attended Harvest for 9th grade. As you can see, the majority of students, when they leave Harvest, attend Napa High School. There are a few that might go to Vintage, just anecdotally. Sometimes it's because of the ag program at Vintage that's not offered at Napa, or some other possible program that might not be offered that students might be more interested in than continuing on the DLI journey. Next slide, please. Our DLI principals did a great job explaining the DLI program components. Aside from providing the opportunity for students to embrace the gift of biliteracy, bilingualism, and biculturalism, students who remain in the DLI program through high school outperform students who have not enrolled in the K-12 DLI program. Let's take a look at some of that data. Next slide, please. This slide shows that by 11th grade, students, 81% of the students who have persevered in the program meet or exceed the standard in English language arts on the state test, the CASP. The blue bar represents students who are enrolled in the DLI program, and the gray bar represents all other students in NVUSD at grades 5th, 8th, and 11th. Oh, go back. As you will see on this slide and the next slide, the students' scores drop in middle school. This drop slightly mirrors what happens district-wide during the middle school years. You will often see sort of a noticeable dip in middle school, and then our 11th grade CASP data is higher than our middle school CASP data. Next slide, please. In math, you will see again that students who continue through the DLI program outperform other students. In the early grades, math is taught mostly in Spanish, and that could be a possible factor in the lower scores at 5th grade. compared to students not enrolled in DLI. It is also important to note that the high school group is relatively small in comparison to the number of students who start the DLI program by the time they get to 11th grade. Next slide, please. We decided to explore how our DLI English learners performed in comparison to English learners who were not enrolled in a DLI program. Again, you will see that English learners who remain in the DLI program outperform English learners who do not. This data includes English learners who have been reclassified as well. So students who start out as English learners who are reclassified anytime over the time they're with us, their experience in DLI, they outperform by the time they get to 11th grade. You can see that the students that remain in that program far outperform students who are English learners who do not experience the DLI program. Next slide, please. These last two slides continue to show that English learners benefit from the DLI program as well as those who are acquiring Spanish. This slide in particular, you can see one of the things you'll notice that 28% of our students in math at the 11th, 28% of our English learners at the 11th grade level met or exceeded the standard as compared to 12% of those who had not participated in the dual language program. Next slide, please. That concludes our presentation. Are there any questions?
I have a few. It was great to see the presentation on this pathway tonight, and I loved learning more about it. I have two questions and then a comment. I can't help but notice that not a lot of students are sticking with the DLI program. Slide, I think it was 9, is rather shocking in that middle school enrollment is less than 1/3 of the elementary school level. I would expect it to be roughly half based on 6th grade levels at elementary and only 3 at middle. But the numbers get even worse when we move to high school. Why do so many students abandon the DLI program?
Thank you for your question, Trustee Gracia. I think one of the things that we have to sort of factor in is that if you look at the numbers of DLI students from kindergarten through 5th grade, one of the things you'll see is that the numbers are, like you said, are significantly larger than middle school, but the middle school numbers or the high school numbers do not include any students from Puebla Vista. So that might be why, like when you look at the high school numbers, it's like, well, why we have 190 kids in kindergarten, if you total NVLA and PV, but only 69 in 9th grade. Some of that could be like that there were only half of the kids, less than half of those kids would have been from NVLA that would have matriculated all the way up to 9th grade at the high school level. And so that could be a factor. I think there are other things that factor into that. At the middle school level, sometimes, parents are really passionate about dual language at the elementary level. And as students get to middle school, unless it's part of their program, then, they might not want to continue on. Electives can sometimes factor in if students, opt not to take the immersion class at the 9th grade level and opt to take an elective. That sometimes factors into their decision. I don't know if any of the principals on the call want to share some of the things that might factor into a student's decision or a family's decision not to continue through the dual language pathway from elementary, middle, and high school.
So just, I want to preface quickly, I understand the argument about high school because we don't have the PV kids there yet, but the numbers between elementary and middle are alarming.
Yes, and I think if you look, you notice that NVLA students typically, transition very, like a large number transition to Harvest, where at Puebla Vista specifically in last school year, the 1920 year, half, like less than half actually left Puebla Vista and went to Harvest. And as I mentioned in the presentation, sometimes it's location, sometimes it's parents seeking something different at that middle school level.
I think it's important to note with the high school numbers that students may choose not to continue in the immersion subject specific course of social science, but still be enrolled in their Spanish course throughout their 4 years of high school in order to get to the 2 advanced placement courses and achieve the results that they do in those advanced placement courses. Many of those students have 4 years of Spanish, but may not be enrolled in that additional elective required by the International Spanish Academy program in 9th grade. So the data in the transition from Harvest to Napa High may be a little deceiving, and those numbers wouldn't account for those students continuing on in Spanish.
Thank you, Principal Reddy. I think, and I know Trustee Gracia is really focused on sort of the elementary to middle school transition. Correct, Trustee Gracia?
That is correct. Yeah, I was most focused because I understood the explanation about the middle to high school transition doesn't quite have the full number of students because PV students haven't gotten there yet. I was focused more on the elementary to middle transition, as that seems particularly weak.
As the principal of Puebla Vista, one of the things that I can say is sometimes it is distance, being that Puebla Vista is in for transportation from North Napa. And the other part of it is that Puebla Vista being a new dual immersion school, you know, by the time the kids get to middle school, it's only 3 years. So it's just getting families used to students continuing it into the middle school. I do believe that the parents that we have today at Puebla Vista, they are dedicated to the program. It's just understanding the program more at the middle schools, where NVLA has a 6th grade. So the longer that the students are in the program at the elementary school, then they feel safer moving on to middle school. I do believe that as the program continues in elementary, we'll see a higher attrition to middle school.
Yeah, and just to add to that, you know, the pattern that we see in PV is something that we had at NVLA when we were first starting. So it does take a few years for, you know, the families to become accustomed to the pathway and fully commit. But I believe that over time it will also happen for PV families.
I agree, Principal Uribe. As you can see in the data, you do see an increase from Puebla Vista, and I believe that communication and community involvement will be key in inspiring those families to continue to transition to the middle school level.
Is there a thought to have communication amongst all the principals involved here to kind of address retention for middle school and high school? I mean, there's obviously strong belief in the program and a lot of ideas around the why it might be happening, but maybe we could take a more proactive approach to determine what some of the issues might be and then how we could address them.
Thank you, Trustee Jenkins. Yes, that actually pre-pandemic, there was actually a dual language task force group that met regularly to, one, they worked on the vision in terms of strengthening the K-12 pathway. And that is something that definitely in terms of just even communicating around what the middle school program's like, what the high school program comprises of would be critical, because I think parents need that sense of confidence in what they're signing their child up for. One of the things that Principal Roca mentioned is that they speak a lot to parents when they start at kindergarten level regarding the commitment to dual language, because when you start in kindergarten, you really have to be committed through the 5th or 6th grade, because of those, the first couple of years are really challenging for those families who are not Spanish speaking. So that is something that we definitely will continue post pandemic, is really looking on ways to strengthen the communication and the articulation between the different levels.
Thank you, Pat.
So I would also like to get an explanation around why the non-DLI students are outperforming the DLI students, especially in math, particularly at the elementary and middle school levels. It seems like they only surpass their counterparts for the very few who stick with it all the way through 11th grade.
Yes, Trustee Gracia, there are a couple of factors that might play into that, and I'm going to answer, and then I'll toss to some of the principals, and maybe they can give some additional insight. For the dual language immersion program, the first few years are done primarily, math is done primarily in Spanish, and that may play a role in students' understanding. It is definitely something that we would need to look more closely at to kind of understand what else might be going on. I don't know if any of the principals want to respond or add any additional information.
At Puebla Vista, I will say that math has been a goal of ours. Sometimes we focus so much on language that math can take a back seat. Our math scores at Puebla Vista have continued to increase over the past 4 years. So it has been an area of growth at Puebla Vista. But I will say, as you see, our English language scores outperform our traditional English counterparts, where math, we are a little bit lower. So sometimes when you focus on one, you lose a little bit of sight of the other. So I know that both NVLA and Puebla Vista have been collaboratively working with PIA, who works with the Bridges program, and doing consulting with the teachers and working on instruction.
So even if, let's suppose that the Spanish teaching in the early elementary grades hampered some of the math development at elementary, by the time they hit middle school, they're doing 50-50. So what is the explanation for the middle school problem?
Trustee Gracia, when I look at the middle school data, we have 25% met or exceeded for our DLI and 27%. So it's a 2 percentage point difference between those two. As we all are very well aware, our math scores at the district, I think we're sitting at 34% for met or exceeded the standard in math across the district. So it's like it's an area of tremendous growth. I wouldn't be proud of the 27%, that shows that there's a need to address that comprehensively. I don't think that's solely a DLI sort of issue.
Well, they are lagging their counterparts. That does indicate there is some issue. At the end of the day, though, it's clear to me that this pathway needs strengthening. I'm excited about the possibility of strengthening this pathway as we redesign middle and elementary schools. This, however, is not the only program that is worthy of a pathway in the district. By establishing other program pathways, I think it would reinforce the strength of each of those individual paths in the district. I believe we could have 3 or 4 solid paths through the district, perhaps DLI, STEAM, and maybe IB.
Are there other questions yet? Trustee Chu?
So I am jealous of the DLI program for our Spanish speakers because I am bilingual in Mandarin Chinese. I am trying my best to also pass that down to my 2 children. And I'll give you the other side of how I'm doing it. And it is not DLI, and it is hard. We go to Chinese school on Saturdays. Kids do not want to go to another day of school. It is hard, and they really, you see lots of parents struggling to bring that to their children. And I know Trustee Gracia has pointed out that there's a drop-off, when you go to middle school. Drop-off is way earlier when you go to Saturday Chinese school. It is between 2nd and 3rd grade where you see a huge drop-off, and then another drop from 3rd to 4th. At least that is my experience in our Saturday Chinese school. Now, our Saturday Chinese school also catered to anybody We had a mix of native Chinese speaking families with people who were bicultural and also people who were not Chinese at all. And so you do see that there's a huge difference in whether you have family who speak Chinese at home, like mine, and families who don't speak Chinese at home. And it's harder when you don't speak it at home. You cannot support your children very well. So my guess is some of that drop off may be related to that. And you know, kudos to them for sticking it out through elementary, because I haven't seen much of that even in my own Chinese community. And the other thing is I actually have to drive to Concord to get that every Saturday. And it is a drive. I mean, it's you know, you think, you know, it's only like 25 miles. It's still a drive every single Saturday. And we cannot do anything else that day because we are dedicated to Chinese school. So I'm very happy that the district offers this to our community. Even if it needs work, I think it's so worthwhile to keep that culture. And I wish that, you know, we could have that for my language, but obviously, you know, I think we serve the best community that we can. And I'm very happy to hear all the progress that we have for the DLI. So my questions now, how many students in the DLI program are from American Canyon?
Thanks, Trustee Shu. There are currently 8 students from American Canyon that attend Harvest. There are 26 at NVLA from American Canyon and 25 from Puebla Vista.
I would love to see some sort of strand DLI program down in American Canyon. I'm just putting that out there. I would totally put my kid, I would have, had I been able to work out logistics, I would have loved to have put my kids through NVLA. That's the closest DLI program to me. So I know Trustee Gracia had some issues with the CASP data, and I'm a scientist by training, so I look at a lot of data. And sometimes when you compare data from a DLI program to the general population, it's not really that comparable. So it's hard in this setting to be able to, you know, do like a scientific study where you're doing case control, whatever it is that you do to measure, compare populations. So one of the things that I thought, well, maybe a little bit easier to grasp is if we look at just Harvest students and those that are in DLI program versus those that are not in DLI program, what do we see in difference in CASP scores for those 8th graders?
Mr. Ruiz, can you bring back up the slides and then we can look at the one that has the achievement data for DLI. I don't know what slide that is, but and you'll see that for I only have the 8th grade on here, so that only gives you that grade point for English language arts. But when you look at overall at Harvest, 32.8% of students that are not in the DLI program met or exceeded the standard for CASP in English. So 42% of the ELA's English, the DLI students met, and then overall at Harvest 32.8% met for ELA. And then Mr. Ruiz, if you could go to the math slide. For math, you'll see that the DLI students 25%, the non-DLI 13.2%. So if you look at, you're right, if you look at just, these are data from all, this is the non-DLI data point is all NVUSD 8th graders. But if you look at the students at Harvest, in math, 13.2 met or exceeded the standard in math and on the CASP.
So there is a difference.
There is a difference.
I don't know how comparable that population is for a comparison group, but I think it's worth looking at as well. when we talk about these numbers. My other question was related to reclassification. Do we see any differences in the years it takes for the English language learners to get reclassified when you are in DLI program versus the non-DLI program? Now, I don't know it's that easy to do when the way that DLI is set up for the lower grades, but maybe by 5th grade, we can have an idea of whether, by the time, I think 5th grade, it was 50-50, right?
Well, yes, and actually, thanks to Director Peter Aboud, he did go and pull numbers around the redesignation rate for 5th, 8th, and 11th graders. And actually, there really is no significant difference between students who are in DLI versus non-DLI English learners in terms of their redesignation rate.
Great. So it doesn't hurt them at all.
No.
Well, but they're still getting a second language.
They're getting the second language. I think they're gaining strength in their primary language, their L1 as we call it. And they are and then still managing, still being reclassified at the same rate of students who, are getting all English instruction from kindergarten on.
Great, that's good to know. And my last question is, how is Spanish assessed for the DLI students? I know we get a lot of data on STAR testing, but we only see English, the ELA, the reading, and also math. So I'm totally in the dark about how you would assess Spanish.
I'm going to toss that to one of the principals around how the Spanish is assessed. There are certain tools that we use in English, whether it's there's the DIBELS assessment that we use in English. There's a comparison in Spanish called ADEL. But I want to see if either of the principals want to sort of expand on that.
So aside from the Spanish version of DIBELS, which is called EVED, we also use NVLA uses something called Evaluación de Lectura, the EDL, which is a one-on-one assessment that measures reading comprehension, accuracy, and fluency. And at Pueblo Vista, they use a similar assessment, assesses the same areas in reading, but their program is called Fontes Centenal. So those are the assessments that we're using for Spanish reading. And then we also do, writing assessments in both English and Spanish. And Principal Roca, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, that's exactly it. K2, we both, NVLA and Pueblo Vista focus on phonemic awareness and looking at those early literacy skills. And we measure their reading comprehension, but in 3.5, we also look at reading comprehension in Spanish, just to make sure that students have vocabulary as well. And as Principal, as she Alejandro was saying, we also do the assessments in English and CASP, and we take all the STAR assessments in English, 2nd through 5th grade, or 6th grade for NVLA.
So I saw that there was a STAR Spanish test. Is that even appropriate for DLI students at all?
At Harvest Middle School, we've begun to access the STAR Spanish data. So we're very excited that with STAR, we have that opportunity. It'll give us a nice gauge on where our students are at with their fluency. But aside from that, our Spanish teachers work on designing formative and summative assessments that help gauge where the students are on their understanding with comprehension and reading and how they're advancing in their writing so that they can get really granular on where the students are at with their skills and being able to move them forward and what they need to learn next in their learning steps.
Great, thank you very much.
So I would like to respond that maybe I've been misunderstood because I see that there is some weakness at the middle school level, and we have an opportunity to strengthen that, right? To really reinforce the opportunity for this program and pathway to be stronger than it is. And we're doing work around middle school redesign presently. And so I believe that this is the opportunity we need to really bolster this program and try to make it a really shining example and a great pathway that I know it can be, because we're partway there, but I think we can do better.
I would second that.
And I would totally agree with that as well, that we do have an opportunity to provide this experience to even more students at the middle school and high school level.
Now English ELA is my field. And, when I'm looking at the 11th grade, 81% meeting or exceeding standards on the CASP and versus 56%, that does speak to me. And I know a lot of students who've been through the immersion program, and doors have opened for them. Doors have opened for them. They've gotten scholarships to top schools. It's helped them with employment. It is a good pathway, but of course, we can fine tune it. I remember touring when I first got on the board, touring Puebla Vista, and I was so impressed. And also, this is something that, a lot of our local students are going to college and becoming teachers and coming back and working in the programs, particularly at Puebla Vista, which is something, we like to see. But I don't know, 81% looks, pretty good to me in 11th grade. Now I see it 60% in 5th grade. It does drop, 8th grade. And, we've talked about, we've got some retooling in middle school to do, but boy, it comes back roaring in 11th grade. So, there's a lot to be proud of there. And speaking as an old AP teacher, those AP pass rates are very impressive. So that's all I'm saying.
Thank you, Trustee Water. I think in that note of we're looking at a lot of quantitative data in front of us, but there's also the other piece, the qualitative data out there that as you do a walkthrough in one of the campuses and you go into the classrooms, and it's just quite amazing to see the work happening in front of you. I'm with you, Trustee Chu. I wish this was available when I went to the district myself, just because it does bring a sense of, for our English learners, just your identity and embracing that part of you, and then bringing along your community with you, with your non-Spanish speakers. It's just, that kind of pathway is pretty exciting. And so, we definitely need to have the data. We run on data. It's important for us to look at the data to help us make some decisions. I think there's definitely a lot of energy in this board to encourage a pathway like this. We see the benefits and we see the challenges and opportunities at the same time. And I think we have the perfect community to do that as well. Speaking of our demographics, we have the perfect demographic community to be able to do this work. And I think just to put the weight of the school district to this effort could mean so much more. For the history, right? It started as a charter, right? Things, programs start like that because they're at that time innovative, they're new, they're creative. It's unseen in districts, and so now we see it. We have the numbers, and I think we have an opportunity to embrace that as we go through the middle school redesign task force work. And I think that's a good sign for us to be able to take that opportunity. And I think our families and the students want that. For any, I have yet to meet, in a household where there's multiple languages, that you wouldn't want your kid to speak your native language. Like I have yet to meet a parent, a caregiver, a grandmother that wouldn't want to communicate with the students in their house with the language from their native land or their identity. So I think there's some energy around that, and I think there's momentum that we can definitely be part of and supporting. So I, for one, definitely support that work, absolutely.
Can I make one anecdotal comment?
Yeah.
This is kind of fascinating. Somebody in the, somebody is watching because I just received a comment that they had a child that went through, must have been Pueblo Vista, but MVLA through Harvest. And she just communicated with me that he would have 100% have stayed with immersion had it been available at Vintage. So to Monica's comment, what some of the kids just take Spanish classes, I think there's also some of the kids also, maybe he open enrolled, go to other schools, but she said it was an amazing experience, that it was one of the best things NVUSD has to offer. He is finished with AP Spanish Lit, A+ as a junior, and he's worried about how to keep up Spanish during senior year because he wants to minor in college, and just said to please advocate for the program. So just thought that might be nice to hear at the end of this dialogue.
That's good. Great. That's great.
And we heard lots of our students in the forums too. Lots of NVUSD students were sharing their own personal experiences. So we know we have those.
I just wanted to add one comment from my perspective as a former elementary school teacher, which is the sort of invisible isn't the right word, but not quantifiable in something that we can put in a bar graph, is the importance of self-esteem for learners. And I just was really struck by the model and the framing of it as the leaders that, you know, the native Spanish speakers take on the role of language leaders and sort of coaches for their native English classmates in those early years. And just how empowering that probably is for them, and how that must bolster self-esteem, whereas the traditional pathway would be the flip side of that experience of not being a native speaker and feeling maybe lost and not always comprehending everything. So I think for the communities, the traditionally underserved communities that are sometimes marginalized in traditional approaches, that's a really powerful but not quantifiable experience. And then the flip side of that for the native English speakers, and Trustee Dooley mentioned there's a little bit of the experience of listening to the interpreter that we both had listening to the Spanish Town Hall this week. I think it's also a really not quantifiable but impactful experience for the native English speakers to start out school and have that experience. They're members of the dominant language and, you know, some would argue dominant culture in our country right now. But their starting school experience is one of needing help to understand what's happening because it's not their native language. And I think I just wanted to highlight that as being another sort of not quantifiable, but certainly a powerful benefit of students involved in this program.
Yep, I'm all about the non-quantifiable because we're dealing with human beings. But one thing that is quantifiable, I've read lots of studies, and being bilingual makes you smarter. And the sooner we get at children, you know, I'm always talking about the myelin sheath closing off, the younger the better. And I even remember substituting up at Napa Valley Language Academy years ago when I was starting out, and I had taken 2 classes in Spanish, which wasn't enough. And my goodness, those children were so good at helping me. They loved helping the substitute teacher. They got a lot of ego strokes that day. You know, their self-esteem was all over the place. They were 4th graders. It was fun.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments?
I just, I want to thank the principals and Assistant Superintendent Pat Andrew Jennings. I think it's great. We bring to the school board the things that we value, that we think are important, that we think, require us to look at closely, think about ways that we can celebrate our success, but also make improvements. DLI has been in the district for a long time, as Alejandra Uribe shared the history. And I don't know when the last time a presentation on the pathway and on the data and on the program model were brought to the school board. So it's here today because we want to signal to our principals, our DLI principals, our DLI teachers, our DLI student community that this is a program that we greatly value for so many of the reasons that the board members mentioned. So I want to thank the 4 DLI principals in the district for staying up past what I know is a principal bedtime.
Yes.
And hanging in there with us. So thank you, trustees, for all of your attention to this critical program in our district.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Mercedes, and thank you, everybody, for joining us. I will ask Mr. Ruiz if there's any public comment on this item.
There are no public comments for this item, President Gonzalez-Mares.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ruiz. All right, let's move on to item J2B, introduction of supplementary instructional program, adoption grades, K through 6 toolbox project, social emotional learning curriculum. All right, this is an item that the Instructional Support Services Division is recommending for approval for the supplementary instructional program. Do we have any questions?
It's just coming as introduction tonight. This is as a curriculum, we're doing a first introduction and then we'll bring it for action at the second March board meeting.
Thank you. Just finished reading that again. Okay, now we're moving on to item J2C. This is the introduction of supplementary instructional program adoption for elementary school. It's probably my bedtime too at this point. I know. Any questions? Okay. Thank you. All right, so we're moving to item K. These are our action items. So K1, this is under business services. This is our K1A 2020-2021 second interim report.
Move second.
Moved by trustee Jankowicz, second by trustee Gracia. Mr. Reese, do I have any public comment on this item?
There are no public comments for this item, President Gonzalez-Mares.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Reese. Student board rep?
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any oppose or abstain? No? Okay. Thank you. We're now moving on to human resources. These are resolutions. This is resolution 2117, human resources release of temporary certificated employees. Mr. Reese, do I have public comment on this item?
There are no public comments for this item, President Gonzalez-Mares.
Okay.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
A first by trustee Gracia, second by trustee Jankowicz. Ms. Vera, roll call, please.
Student Board Member Magaña,
Aye.
Trustee Gonzalez-Mares,
Aye.
Trustee Jankowicz,
Aye.
Trustee Gracia,
Aye.
Trustee Ricer,
Aye.
Trustee Water,
Aye.
Trustee Shu,
Aye.
Trustee Dooley. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morales. Item K2B, Resolution 2118, Human Resources Release, Reassignment of Administrators.
So moved.
First by trustee Gracia,
Second.
a second by trustee Dooley. Mr. Reese, do I have public comment on this item?
There are no public comments for this item, President Gonzalez-Mares.
Ms. Morales, if you could do roll call.
Student Board Member Magaña,
Aye.
Trustee Gonzalez-Mares,
Aye.
Trustee Jankowicz, Trustee Gracia,
Aye.
Trustee Ricer,
Aye.
Trustee Water,
Aye.
Trustee Shu,
Aye.
Trustee Dooley.
Aye.
Thank you.
Now on to item K2C, Resolution 2119, Human Resources Non-Reelection of Probationary Certificated Employees.
So moved.
First by trustee Gracia,
Second.
second by trustee Dooley. Mr. Reese, do I have public comment on this item?
There are no public comments for this item, President Gonzalez-Mares.
Mr. Reese, I have a first and a second. Ms. Morales, if you could do roll call.
Student Board Member Magana,
Aye.
Trustee Gonzalez Mares,
Aye.
Trustee Jankowicz,
Aye.
Trustee Gracia,
Aye.
Trustee Ricer,
Aye.
Trustee Water,
Aye.
Trustee Shu,
Aye.
Trustee Dooley.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going on to item K3 under instructional services, K3A, Resolution 2120, renewal of cooperative work agreement with the California Department of Rehabilitation.
So moved.
Second.
The first by Trustee Gracia, second by Trustee Dooley. Mr. Reese, do I have public comment?
There are no public comments for this item, President Gonzalez Mares.
Thank you, Mr. Reese. Vera, Ms. Morales, if you could do roll call, please.
Yes, Student Board Member Magana,
Aye.
Trustee Gonzalez Mares,
Aye.
Trustee Jankowicz,
Aye.
Trustee Gracia,
Aye.
Trustee Ricer,
Aye.
Trustee Water,
Aye.
Trustee Shu,
Aye.
Trustee Dooley.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going on to item K4 under operational services. K4A, temporary emergency facilities use agreement between Napa Valley Unified School District and St. Joseph Health Northern California LLC.
So moved.
Second.
First by Trustee Gracia, second by Trustee Dooley. Do I have any public comment on this item, Mr. Reese?
There are no public comments for this item, President Gonzalez Mares.
Great, thank you. A first and a second. Student Board Rep,
Aye.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody oppose or abstain? Great, motion passes. Thank you. K4B, maintenance and operations disposition of assets.
So moved.
First by Trustee Gracia, second by Trustee Jankowicz. Do I have any public comment on this item, Mr. Reese?
There are no public comments for this item, President Gonzalez Mares.
Thank you. Student Board Rep,
Aye.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody oppose or abstain? Great, thank you. K4C, disposition of surplus asset surface grinder machine.
So moved.
Second.
First by Trustee Gracia, second by Trustee Dooley. Do I have any public comment on this item?
There are no public comments for this item, President Gonzalez Mares.
Thank you, Mr. Reese. Student Board Rep,
Aye.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Any oppose or abstain? Great, motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to item K5, school planning and construction, K5A, SPC number 12.24-20, request for geotechnical services at the VHS tennis courts by Miller Pacific.
So moved.
Second.
First by Trustee Gracia, a second by Trustee Dooley. Do I have any public comment on this item?
There are no public comments for this item, President Gonzalez Mares.
Thank you, Mr. Reese. Student Board Rep,
Aye.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody oppose or abstain? Motion passes. Thank you. I keep switching the numbers. K5B, SPC number 19.20-20. Request for inspector of record services by M&M inspection for American Canyon Middle School student. Commons project.
So moved.
I'll second.
First by Trustee Gracia and duly done by Trustee Chu, a second. Do I have any public comment on this item?
There are no public comments for this item, President Gonzalez Mares.
Great, thank you, Mr. Reese. Student Board Rep,
Aye.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody oppose or abstain? Great, thank you. Item K5C, SPC number 18.29-20, request for award for leaseback services to Wright Contracting.
So moved.
First by Trustee Gracia.
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Dooley. A second by Trustee Dooley. Do I have any public comment on this item, Mr. Reese?
There are no public comments for this item, President Gonzalez Mares.
Student Board Rep,
Aye.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody oppose or abstain? Motion passes. Okay, we're now on to informational. Under business services enrollment report.
So the numbers here continue to be alarming. we have a month-over-month decline of another 40-something students. COVID is really accelerating the pace at which students are leaving our district. I would like more data on where these students are heading. Do we do exit interviews or exit tracking? Do we know where these kids are headed?
Would you like me to answer that?
Mr. Manguala, yes, go ahead.
Yes. So while we make every attempt to collect data, when possible, but sometimes we're not necessarily the point of contact. We don't necessarily hear it directly, and so what we're hearing, it does vary, but we are hearing some of the data that we've received recently are people are moving out of the area, so either moving to less expensive areas in California or moving out of state.
And Mr. Manguala, so one thing we're also, Mr. Manguala and I have talked about it along with our Director of Enrollment Services, Miss Chris Gross. We are talking about sort of formalizing more and more as we refine our centralized enrollment strategy to do more data tracking upon exit. So that's kind of a new emerging area for us in this new world of centralized enrollment in NVUSD.
I'm glad to hear that we're moving towards better data tracking of people that are leaving our district, and I support those efforts.
Trustee Reiser, did you have a comment?
Oh, Dr. Massetti answered my question.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, we are now moving on to item M, additional suggestions and comments from board members and superintendent. No? Okay. Then, all right. Future agenda items.
Maybe we could look into the possibility of erecting that reading task force.
Yeah, Trustee Gracia, we'll be talking about that, and you're there as a committee member in the curriculum and student support. So we'll have some initial discussions in subcommittee, and then talk about sort of the literacy agenda with the full board.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Massetti. All right, we're now on to the last item. Item O.
Move to adjourn.
First, there's several voices here. First by Trustee Gracia and a second by Trustee Water. I'm going to honor her raising her hand there.
Yeah.
And Student Board Rep?
Aye.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do you oppose or abstain? We are adjourned. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.